Chapter 2352. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Hang Medical Examiner was a famous medical examiner in Pyoryeo City. He had handled almost 1,000 cases and successfully found the real culprit in 800 cases. He was the one who brought justice to the deceased. This was because Hang Medical Examiner's observation was meticulous and could find clues from the scene of the crime. From these clues, he could solve the case completely. Whenever there was a trace of the murderer at the crime scene, Hang Medical Examiner would be able to see through it. Therefore, Hang Medical Examiner was very famous in Country Z's legal medical field. Because of Hang Medical Examiner's amazing ability, even outside of Pyoryeo City, other provinces in Country Z would hire Hang Medical Examiner for help when they encountered difficult cases. This also fully demonstrated Hang Medical Examiner's great ability. What about Yun Jian? She actually said that Hang Medical Examiner's standard was not worthy of competing with her. Hang Medical Examiner was, after all, an extremely famous existence in Z country's medical field. What about her? Although she had a verified certificate from the highest international medical examiners institution, the certificate was just a form of writing. Hang Medical Examiner, at least in Country Z's legal medical field, was known by everyone. He was a real person who did the work. What about her? Even if she was from the highest international medical examiners institution, she was not even famous in the legal medical field before this. Sometimes, fame represented ability. What was the use of having the best certificate? Therefore, after hearing Yun Jian's words, Luo Jiejun, Hong Ling, Wei Zhe, Wei Min and Captain Zhou, who had been standing at the side, could not help but twitch the corners of their mouths. No matter how good Yun Jian was, Hang Medical Examiner's ability was right there for all to see. How could a little girl like her, who was not famous in the legal medical field, be compared to her? However, the few people present did not know that Yun Jian was not famous in the legal medical field because she, Yun Jian, was hired as a special guest of the highest international medical examiners institution with a high price in the name of the hand of death in the medical field. To put it bluntly, Yun Jian was hired by the highest international medical examiners institution to keep up appearances. Have you ever seen a big boss move bricks with his workers? Asking Yun Jian, the hand of death, to handle the case was harder than ascending to the heavens. Therefore, she had never been famous in the forensic science world. However, if the name, Hand of the Grim Reaper, was mentioned, her fame was enough to shock the entire world. It was not something that a forensic doctor from Hangzhou could compare to. Young lady, you're indeed capable. You've entered the top international medical academy at such a young age. I don't know if I have any hope of entering that place in my lifetime, but in terms of strength and experience, I'm not inferior to you. We'll know who's better once we compete. Otherwise, I think you don't even dare to compete with me. The one who doesn't deserve to compete with me is you. Dr. Hang was also a very stubborn person who refused to admit defeat. After hearing Yun Jian's words, he used the same words to refute her. If Hang Medical Examiner flinched, Yun Jian would look down on such a person. However, Hang Medical Examiner stood up and spoke to Yun Jian in the same unflinching tone. Seeing this, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She had changed her opinion of Hang Medical Examiner from her initial dislike. Wei Lin, do you know what you're saying and doing? As your sister, I can't bear to see you make mistakes again and again. Why are you suddenly getting involved in this mess? Hurry up and come home with me. Wei Min felt that the more Yun Jian continued to speak, the more Luo Jiejun's eyes were fixed on Yun Jian. It was as if he was glued to Yun Jian and couldn't be pulled away. She was furious. After saying this, she walked over and acted as if her younger sister had done something wrong and was angry at her. As she spoke, she reached out to pull Yun Jian. However, just as Wei Min was about to reach out to pull Yun Jian didn't even look at Wei Min. She followed Wei Min's path and wrapped her hand around Wei Min's head like a snake's nimble body. Then, in front of everyone, Yun Jian looked at Medical Examiner Hang and pressed Wei Min's head against the corner of the wall. Just as Wei Min was about to suffocate from the pressure, Yun Jian suddenly grinned at Medical Examiner Hang and spoke as if nothing had happened. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I suddenly feel that you're not bad. Let's compete and see who can find the murderer first. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2353. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. No one was surprised by Yun Jian's sudden change in tone. Wei Min wanted to take Yun Jian away, but Yun Jian grabbed her by the head and pressed her against the wall. She almost suffocated and screamed for help. Let go. I can't breathe. Brother Jejun, save me. Wei Min was pressed against the wall and almost suffocated. Her first reaction was to ask Luo Jejun for help. Yun Jian pinned Wei Min's head to the corner of the wall with one hand, but her eyes were on medical examiner Hang, acting like nothing had happened. Wait, Lin. That's your sister. You've gone too far this time. Wei Zhe was the first to rush up and save Wei Min from Yun Jian. Yun Jian tossed Wei Min to Wei Zhe before he rushed over and slowly took out a napkin from her pants pocket to wipe her hand that had touched Wei Min's head just now. Wei Lin, what's the meaning of this? Wei Zhe finally managed to save Wei Min, but when he saw Yun Jian wiping her hand in front of everyone, his face darkened. Wei Lin, I'm on Wei Min's side this time. You've gone too far. Luo Jejun's lips curled as he spoke to Yun Jian like he was ordering her. Luo Jejun was high and mighty. In the past, whenever a girl spoke to him, the girl would be so excited that she couldn't sleep for a few days and nights. Hence, Luo Jejun's words always had a sense of superiority. Captain Zhou, tell me all the information you've collected about Lin Jiaoyue. However, whether it was Luo Jejun or Wei Zhe, Yun Jian shouldn't ignore them. She crumpled the napkin into a ball and threw it into the trash can nearby without looking at it. Okay. Captain Zhou nodded and reported. According to the information I collected about Lin Jiaoyue this morning, there were only two major events that happened to Lin Jiaoyue recently. One was a few days ago, Lin Jiaoyue took the lead to bully a girl named Ling Chanxian. The other thing happened half a month ago. After a boy confessed to Lin Jiaoyue in public, Lin Jiaoyue humiliated him in public. According to insiders, after the boy was humiliated by Lin Jiaoyue, he lost all his love for Lin Jiaoyue and has been harboring hatred in his heart. He discussed with some other boys to teach Lin Jiaoyue a lesson. After Captain Zhou's words, everyone's eyes darkened. Only this much information? Then how should they investigate? Luo Jejun, Hong Ling, and the others were stunned. Just as Luo Jejun and the others were wondering where they should start with such a difficult case where there was no trace of the murderer at the scene, Yun Jian suddenly spoke up. I'll go check Lin Jiaoyue's body. After that, Yun Jian walked towards the autopsy room. Hang medical examiner also had the same idea, so he entered with Yun Jian. Luo Jejun and the others pondered for a while before following him. At that moment, Yun Jian had already lifted the white cloth covering the body on the operating table. From the looks of it, the deceased should have drowned and suffocated to death. I'll dissect the body. Hang medical examiner saw this and was about to put on his equipment to perform the autopsy. The cause of death of the deceased could not be discerned with the naked eye. The existence of a medical examiner was to let the dead speak. Some corpses seemed to have drowned to death, but the real cause of death was not what it appeared to be. At this time, it was necessary for a medical examiner to perform an autopsy and find the cause of death from the organs of the corpse. Therefore, an autopsy was needed. Finding the cause of death of the deceased was only to find the murderer faster. There's no need to look for it. It was stabbed to death by a silver needle. Just as Hang medical examiner was about to do it, Yun Jian suddenly said. After that, Yun Jian did not wait for anyone to react. She walked to the corpse and pulled out a silver needle from the long hair on the scalp of the corpse. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. Yun Jian had not touched the corpse in such a secluded place. How did she find it so quickly? Even Hang medical examiner was stunned. However, just as everyone was shocked, Yun Jian curled her lips. She stared at the extremely difficult to find silver needle and said something that made everyone's eyes twitch fiercely. Only a professional can use the strength of their hands to stab an extremely thin silver needle into the top of a person's head. This move is the basic course of an assassin's organization. Top reading website M. Chapter 2354. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. An Assassin's Foundation Course. Wei Lin, how do you know that this is an Assassin's Foundation course? Before anyone could speak, the red-haired Hong Ling spoke first. After Hong Ling finished speaking, everyone stared at Yun Jian, as though they wanted to get an answer from Yun Jian. Hong Ling's words were what many wanted to ask. However, Yun Jian did not reply. She glanced to the side and continued, for those who have joined an assassin's organization, this is a compulsory foundation course. However, it does not exclude those who have learned it on their own. From the crime scene, I deduced that the victim was abducted on the way to the toilet and was then forcefully dragged into the toilet. At this point, Yun Jian paused for a moment before continuing. There are obvious footprints at the entrance of the toilet. A normal person's footprints should not be all over the entrance. I have already compared the footprints on the victim's shoes with the footprints at the entrance of the toilet. There is no doubt that it is the victim's footprints. Besides the victim's footprints, there is another person's footprints all over the entrance of the toilet. Obviously, those footprints belong to the murderer. Just from the footprints left behind by the victim at the entrance of the toilet, Yun Jian deduced that the victim was dragged into the toilet halfway. When everyone heard this, they were stunned. Yun Jian's observation was too detailed. No one would have thought of such details. Even medical examiner Hang could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he heard Yun Jian's words. Just as medical examiner Hang was about to speak, Yun Jian spoke again. Please leave first. I have something to confirm. It's not convenient for all of you to be here. After hearing Yun Jian's words, perhaps because of Yun Jian's words, everyone left the autopsy room obediently. Yun Jian closed the door of the autopsy room. 3 minutes later, Yun Jian left the autopsy room. The victim's vagina was ruptured. Judging from the bloodstains, it was ruptured less than 24 hours ago. There are obvious marks on the side of the victim's mouth. From this, we can conclude that the victim was raped and then killed. The murderer covered the victim's mouth to prevent her from crying out. Secondly, it made it easier for him to commit the crime. After Yun Jian left the autopsy room, Ben Ren spoke clearly to everyone. Rape and kill? Didn't Captain Zhou say that half a month ago, a boy confessed to Lin Jiaoyue and was humiliated instead? That boy admires Lin Jiaoyue but harbors a grudge against her. Could he be the one who did this? Luo Jiajun was, after all, the future heir of the Luo family. He possessed intelligence that most people did not have. These words seem to reveal everything. Brother Jiajun has never studied forensic science, but he's just that amazing. This is something that outsiders can never learn. Wei Min, who had been pressed against the wall by Yun Jian and almost suffocated, could not help but praise Luo Jiajun. However, Luo Jiajun ignored Wei Min. He turned to look at Captain Zhou and said, Captain Zhou, should we detain the suspect now? Luo Jiajun's words made a lot of sense to everyone present. Even Hong Ling and Wei Zhe felt that Luo Jiajun's analysis at this moment was comparable to Yun Jian's. Medical examiner Hang stood aside, speechless. However, just as everyone was thinking this, Yun Jian suddenly said, I already know who the murderer is. Captain Zhou, get ready to arrest him. As soon as these words came out, everyone present was dumbfounded. Medical examiner Hang was even more stunned. After being stunned for a moment, he looked at Yun Jian and asked with a changed expression, What? You already know who the murderer is? The complexity of this case is probably comparable to an S-rank mission. How long have you been on this mission? You already know who the murderer is. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2355. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. The S-level missions in the forensics world were the same as those in the assassin world. SSS level missions, S-level missions, A-level missions, B-level missions, from the big to the small, S-level missions were considered extremely difficult. As for SSS level missions, they only had a 5% success rate. Lin Jiaoyue's death was a complete mystery. The murderer must be a habitual offender who had erased all traces of the crime scene. Such a mission was considered an S-level mission, at least in the forensics world. For others, even at their fastest speed, it would take them several months to solve an S-rank mission. To be able to solve it, it would be considered impressive. But what about Yunjian? How long had it been since she took over the mission? Did she already know who the murderer was? While everyone was still in shock, the group had already followed Yunjian to Sister Biao's classroom. The boy who confessed to the victim was also in the victim's class. Could he really be the murderer? According to the investigation, the boy who confessed to the victim was not in the classroom on the day of her death. It was said that he had applied for leave. Captain Zhou suddenly spoke when they were about to reach Sister Biao's classroom. Yun Jian did not reply to his question. When they reached the classroom, Miss Yang, the homeroom teacher of Sister Biao's class, came out to receive them. Miss Yang was in class at the moment. When she saw Yun Jian and the rest, she hurried over to ask, "How is it? Did you find the murderer?" There were no surveillance cameras near the toilets of the Imperial Academy. This was also the reason why the murderer could not be found. Miss Yang was obviously very concerned about her classmate's death. After all, she was the homeroom teacher and had to take responsibility. It's still under investigation. Can we enter the classroom to take a look? Captain Zhou asked. Of course, please. Mr. Yang had just finished his sentence when he heard a voice. No need to enter the classroom. Yun Jian's voice suddenly rang out. What was she up to again? Hearing this, Wei Min and the rest's faces flashed with displeasure. However, just as Wei Min was thinking this, Yun Jian had already looked straight at Miss Yang in front of everyone. You were not there on the night of the incident. Yeah, last night's self-study session wasn't my class. Mr. Yang nodded. So after killing Lin Jiayue, you framed everything on the boy who confessed to Lin Jiayue half a month ago. Do you really think that no one knows what you've done, Teacher Yang? Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, looked at Teacher Yang, and suddenly said. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present was stunned. What are you talking about? Mr. Yang was also stunned. He looked at Yun Jian and said in a daze. You are indeed very capable. You destroyed all the evidence at the scene, but from the beginning, your expression told me everything. Yun Jian ignored Mr. Yang's rebuttal and continued speaking. Upon hearing Yun Jian's words, Teacher Yang suddenly laughed coldly. After that, Mr. Yang stopped arguing. He reached out and tore off the human skin mask on his face. Then, in front of everyone present, he said, Huh, so what? That's right, I'm not that idiot Yang Jihong. That fool had already gone to hell. But even if you found out about me, what can you do? Before I retired, I was an ace assassin in the International Underground Assassin Organization. I'm already very surprised that you were able to find out that it was me who did it. But if you want to capture me with just your group of trash, then you're all delusional. What police, what medical examiner? In my hands, you're just a group of small fries. Mr. Yang suddenly changed his face and claimed to be an ace assassin in the Underground Assassin Organization. This identity scared Luo Jiajun and the others. Captain Zhou and medical examiner Hang were not in a hurry to turn back. Assassin. And he was an ace assassin in the underground. Everyone present was scared by this change and took 3 steps back. However, just as everyone's face changed and kept retreating, Yun Jian, who stood in the same place without moving, suddenly raised her eyes. That pair of deep black eyes was now stained with a trace of blood red. Then, she looked at Teacher Yang, and suddenly curled her lips into a cold smile. Then, in front of everyone present, she said to Teacher Yang, a sentence that shocked everyone present. Ace assassin in the underground? Which organization are you from? How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? Do you know, when I was in the assassin and secret agent world, you didn't even know what I was. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2356. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Once Yun Jian said that, everyone's eyes widened in shock as they bulged out of their sockets. What did she say? when she was in the world of assassins and secret agents. To be able to say something like that, it meant that Yun Jian was an assassin and secret agent. She had also been in the world of assassins and secret agents. Then her true identity was, "Little brat, are you even 18 years old? You want to compare who has been in the world of assassins and secret agents for longer? I've been in the world of assassins for 30 years. In terms of experience and ability, I'm definitely not weaker than you." Teacher Yang heard Yun Jian's words and refuted Yun Jian loudly before anyone could react. His words were equally arrogant, but there was a confidence in his words that no outsider could imitate. In Teacher Yang's opinion, Yun Jian was at most an 18-year-old girl. In his words, she hadn't even grown her hair yet she dared to say something like, "When I was in the world of assassins and secret agents, you didn't even know what you were." Wei Lin, don't be stubborn. This matter is no longer something we can interfere with. Come back quickly. Let's leave this matter to the police. Luo Jiajun saw Yun Jian standing in front of Teacher Yang and was afraid that Teacher Yang would hurt Yun Jian. He quickly spoke up and tried to call Yun Jian back. Come back quickly. You're a genius in the world of forensic medicine. You've already completed your mission the moment you found the murderer. I've already contacted the Pueyuo City Armed Police Force. I believe that the armed police force will be here soon to assist us in apprehending the murderer. You don't have to interfere with the rest of the matter. Captain Zhou and Luo Jiajun used the same tone to speak to Yun Jian. In fact, Yun Jian's words about being a secret agent and a member of the assassin world were just a bluff from Captain Zhou and Luo Jiajun's point of view. Yun Jian purposely lied to Teacher Yang. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, Yun Jian still dared to speak to Teacher Yang in such a tone. If Yun Jian didn't retreat in the next second, she would definitely lose her life here. Teacher Yang suddenly chuckled. That slut Lin Jiayue refused to be my woman and even scolded me for being the scum of society. She said that I would go to hell sooner or later. Hey, look for yourselves, that's what happened to her. But you little brat actually dare to use such a tone to talk to me. Do you want to end up like that bitch Lin Jiayue? Teacher Yang spoke in a slow and leisurely tone, giving off a sense of leisure and laziness. At this point, Teacher Yang cast a sidelong glance at Yun Jian and continued speaking in front of everyone. TSK, seeing how pretty you are, I really can't bear to kill you, but Teacher Yang. When he said this, he suddenly paused. His black eyes were originally staring at the ground. In the next second, he didn't continue speaking. After pausing, Teacher Yang suddenly raised his eyes that had been staring at the ground. At that moment, he was already charging towards Yun Jian like a bolt of lightning. Immediately after making his move, Teacher Yang bent his hand into a very standard eagle's claw and extended it towards Yun Jian's neck. At the same time, a sinister voice suddenly sounded, "But you can still go to hell." Teacher Yang's sudden attack made everyone present unable to react in time. When Luo Jiajun and the others saw this, their eyes fiercely froze and even their breathing stopped at the same time. It's over. It's too late. Yun Jian is finished. That kind of fast killer move. If one hadn't been in the assassin world for more than 10 years, they wouldn't have been able to withstand it. However, just when everyone thought that Yun Jian was finished, they saw that when Teacher Yang made his move, not only did Yun Jian's face not have the slightest bit of panic, but there was also an incomparably cold smile. In the next second, everyone suddenly saw a scene that caused their pupils to shrink and their mouths to open wide in shock. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2357. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Teacher Yang bent his hands into the shape of an eagle's claw, reaching towards Yun Jian's neck with lightning speed. He planned to grab Yun Jian's neck and kill Yun Jian in one move. The speed of his attack, the way he attacked, it was so fast that no one could react in time. His speed, if he wasn't a trained ace assassin, he definitely wouldn't have the ability to do this. An ace assassin from an underground assassin organization. That was a terrifying existence. To the police, an ace assassin who had undergone strict training, who had been through life and death situations, and who had grown up in a survival of the fittest environment, was simply a nightmare. But even so, a powerful ace assassin from an underground assassin organization would still be caught by the police. But at least for now, Captain Zhou and the few ordinary policemen he brought from the police station, plus Luo Jiajun, Wei Zhe and the other students, as well as Hang Medical Examiner, there was no way they could compete with Teacher Yang. Not to mention saving Yun Jian from the murderous Teacher Yang, who belonged to a group of terrifying assassins from an assassin organization. No. Wei Lin. Luo Jiajun's face suddenly changed. He was so scared that his face suddenly turned pale. Even his teeth started to tremble. Luo Jiajun was so scared that his face suddenly turned pale, his teeth trembling, because he was afraid that Yun Jian would be killed by Teacher Yang. During this period, Luo Jiajun had been paying more and more attention to Yun Jian. At this moment, Yun Jian was like a cloud of fog to Luo Jiajun. The secrets she carried were like a bottomless pit that attracted Luo Jiajun's attention. If Yun Jian died, then all of this would be gone. So Luo Jiajun couldn't bear it, and almost at the same time, he shouted out these words in a hoarse voice. If it was said that Wei Min had never seen Luo Jiajun's various actions before. But at this moment, when Wei Min saw that Luo Jiajun was about to be killed by Teacher Yang because of Yun Jian, she screamed on the spot. Wei Min's face hardened again, her nails digging into her flesh. Ha. Go to hell like Lin Jiaoyue, that untouchable bitch. Ha. However, the crowd only saw that Teacher Yang had already arrived in front of Yun Jian. At that moment, Teacher Yang's hand had already curled into an eagle's claw and was about to grab Yun Jian's neck and deliver a fatal blow. No! Luo Jiajun, Captain Zhou, Hang Medical Examiner, and a few other people who cared about Yun Jian all let out a fatal cry. Just as the crowd screamed and closed their eyes in despair, waiting to see Yun Jian's neck snapped with a crack after Miss Yang grabbed her and killed her on the spot, Yun Jian's face suddenly turned pale. All the others saw was a flicker in Yun Jian's eyes. The next moment, just as Teacher Yang's hand was about to reach Yun Jian leaned to the side and dodged Teacher Yang's attack. Then, in a flash, she appeared behind Teacher Yang. Even Teacher Yang did not have time to react at this speed. Everyone was shocked, but Yun Jian hooked Teacher Yang with her leg and tripped him. The moment Teacher Yang was tripped and fell to the ground, the two butterfly knives in her hands flew out. The saber flashed in an instant and slashed through the meridians of Mr. Yang's wrists and ankles at the speed of lightning. Poof! Blood splattered everywhere. The blood drew a curve in the air and sank into the dust on the ground. This speed was so fast that Teacher Yang did not even have time to react. It was so fast that everyone present widened their eyes. Ah! Teacher Yang's scream suddenly rang out. In the next second, Yun Jian stepped on Mr. Yang from the back and sneered at him in front of everyone. Mr. Yang, you're the one who's being bullied. I already said that when I was in the assassin and secret agent world, you didn't even know what you were. Crippling your limbs. In the past, you were barely considered something, but now you're a complete piece of trash. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2358. Page 1/1. Yun Jian's action of using the butterfly knife to cut Teacher Yang's limbs was completely different from ordinary people cutting their wrists and ankles. These 4 slashes were fast, accurate, and ruthless. It looked like a random cut, no different from a cut on the skin. However, everyone in the circle of assassins and secret agents knew that this was definitely a move that the assassin organization would pass on to the assassin secret agent when the assassin secret agent was trained to the peak state. If this move wasn't executed properly, it could even lead to one's death. In order to execute this move, one must be familiar with the use of the butterfly knife, coupled with nimble movements and a series of continuous movements. More importantly, Yun Jian's seemingly random 4 slashes were actually aimed at the vital points. 4 slashes, just 4 slashes. These 4 slashes had actually severed the meridians of Teacher Yang's left and right hands. In other words, Teacher Yang would never be able to lift his hands or walk with his feet. His hands and feet were completely and utterly crippled. The screaming Teacher Yang was now paralyzed on the ground. He looked at Yun Jian in horror, his face no longer having the arrogance he had when he was shouting at Yun Jian. That move just now. That move was indeed a killer move from an assassin organization. Moreover, it was one of the most difficult killer moves to learn among the killer moves. As far as I know, there are no more than 10 people in this world who know how to use the same move as you did just now. Who are you? Mr. Yang, who was paralyzed on the floor, did not even care about the pain of his limbs being crippled. His eyes rolled up and his eyes were wide as he stared at Yun Jian, like he was trying to find an answer from her face. You can take him away now. You can interrogate him however you want. Also, for this mission, please erase the record of my assistance. Thank you. Yun Jian didn't say anything else. She inserted the 2 butterfly knives into her thighs, then turned and left after speaking to Captain Zhou. If your assistance is reported, it will be recorded as a great merit. Are you sure you want to erase the record of your assistance and even the main person who succeeded in this mission? Captain Zhou couldn't help but ask when he saw Yun Jian turn and leave. Erase it. Unexpectedly, Yun Jian didn't even stop. She left these 2 simple words and left. For a forensic doctor, fame was more important than anything else. Successfully solving a case wasn't just a monetary reward for a forensic doctor, it was also a rise in fame. Only with a rise in fame would you be able to get more cases in the future, and more people would hire you to solve cases. When Hang's medical examiner heard Yun Jian's reply, he was stunned. He finally understood. Why was Yun Jian, a person who was invited as a special guest by the top international medical institution, not at all famous internationally? That was because she had solved the case and didn't care to leave her name. This result stunned Hang's medical examiner. It also made Luo Jiajun and the others gulp hard. If an ordinary person had Yun Jian's ability to solve a case, they would have bragged to the heavens. But what about Yun Jian? She actually asked to erase her record and didn't ask for credit? Luo Jiajun looked at Yun Jian's departing footsteps and pondered. She was really getting more and more charming. Top reading website M. Chapter 2359. A few days later, after Captain Zhou arrested Teacher Yang, the results of the case were out. That day, Yun Jian had just arrived at the classroom when her desk mate, Luo Jiachen, rushed into the classroom and told Yun Jian about the gossip he had heard over the past few days. Wei Lin, did you know? The results of the case that was solved 2 days ago are out. I didn't expect the police to be so powerful. They solved the case in just 2 days. Take a guess. Lin Jiayue's death, who did it? Luo Jiachen didn't know what happened that day. He thought that Yun Jian didn't know anything, so he asked Yun Jian in a suspenseful tone. Yun Jian knew it was intentional. At that, Luo Jiachen looked at Yun Jian with a grin that said, "You don't know about this, do you?" and spoke. "I knew you wouldn't be able to guess. The truth is out. It was Lin Jiayue's homeroom teacher who did it." Lin Jiayue's real homeroom teacher, Yang Jihong, was already dead. The person who pretended to be Lin Jiayue's homeroom teacher was an ace killer. He was amazing, but he was still caught by the police. As expected of our Z country's armed police force. They're amazing. The real reason why Teacher Yang killed Lin Jiayue was because Lin Jiayue was bold and unrestrained, but she fell in love with Yang Jihong, who was already married at that time. He was Lin Jiayue's real homeroom teacher. Teacher Yang originally lived as an ordinary person. He once met Lin Jiayue by chance and confessed to her that he wanted her to be his mistress. Lin Jiayue refused, so Teacher Yang killed Yang Jihong in revenge and pretended to be Yang Jihong to trick Lin Jiayue into going to the toilet. But who knew that Lin Jiayue found out that Yang Jihong was disguised by Teacher Yang, so she wanted to run away. In the end, she was dragged to the toilet by Teacher Yang. After a round of violence, Teacher Yang killed Lin Jiayue with a silver needle with a perverted mind of revenge. He then pretended that Lin Jiayue had committed suicide by soaking her head in the toilet. Everything was settled. It could only be said that Lin Jiayue was very unlucky to have met Teacher Yang, an ace assassin from an assassin organization. Sometimes, when a person's luck starts to deteriorate, you can't stop it. You can even choke to death while drinking water. That's how it works. On this day, Yun Jian went to the school cafeteria for breakfast. She really wanted to eat sauerkraut today, so she brought some sauerkraut and gave it to the cafeteria auntie to add into the stir-fried noodles. After that, he placed the fried noodles in front of a table and sat down to eat. It was really strange. These days, her appetite was getting bigger and bigger. In the past, Yun Jian's appetite was not small, but now her appetite was 3 times as much as before. Therefore, Yun Jian's bowl of fried noodles was equivalent to 3 bowls of ordinary fried noodles. It was Yun Jian who deliberately asked the cafeteria auntie to prepare 3 servings. Damn, Wei Lin, you're eating so much again. Luo Jiachen stepped on the stool and jumped onto it. He sat on the stool, holding a lunchbox that was 1/3 the size of Yun Jian's stir-fried noodles. He stared at her in a daze. Yun Jian responded softly and continued to eat her noodles. At this moment, Luo Jiajun, Wei Zhe, Wei Min, and Hong Ling just happened to walk past the table where Yun Jian and Luo Jiachen were sitting. At this moment, Luo Jiachen was looking at Yun Jian with great interest. When Luo Jiajun and the others walked past Yun Jian, Luo Jiachen suddenly said to Yun Jian, Wei Lin, don't tell me you're pregnant. I heard that women eat a lot when they're pregnant. And to be able to eat 3 times more than ordinary people, this means that there are 2 in your stomach. Don't tell me you're pregnant with twins. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2360. Luo Jiachen was grinning as he said this, his face full of ridicule. As he spoke, his deep black eyes seemed to stare at Yun Jian's stomach that wasn't bulging, and he was all smiles. Suddenly hearing Luo Jiachen's words, Yun Jian's hand that was holding the stir-fried noodles suddenly paused. Jiachen, what nonsense are you talking about? You're usually ignorant and incompetent in the academy, hanging out with your hooligan friends every day. I don't care about you anymore. But what kind of nonsense are you spewing out of your mouth? Wei Lin is still a pure and innocent girl. She hasn't even had a boyfriend. How could she be pregnant? Luo Jiajun had just walked past Yun Jian and Luo Jiachen when he suddenly heard Luo Jiachen's words. Luo Jiajun stopped almost at the same time, turned around and scolded Luo Jiachen. Luo Jiajun suddenly stopped and said such words to his younger brother Luo Jiachen. This action shocked everyone present. Needless to say, Luo Jiajun was paying more and more attention to Yun Jian now. He was just passing by, but when he heard Luo Jiachen's words, Luo Jiajun immediately stopped and scolded his own younger brother in such a tone. And it was because of a girl. This was something that had never happened before. No, brother, can't you tell? I'm just joking with Wei Lin. We usually joke around too. If you don't believe me, you can ask Wei Lin. Luo Jiachen was so scared that his face trembled, and he quickly waved his hand and pointed at Yun Jian. Wei Lin, don't you think so? Luo Jiachen looked at Yun Jian with an expression that begged her for help, and his hands were begging for help. He didn't want his big brother to complain to his dad. Yun Jian responded softly, then she picked up the pickled cabbage stirred in the stir-fried noodles, chewed it, and continued to eat. Yun Jian didn't think that she was pregnant. She used to eat a lot, and recently, she didn't feel like vomiting anymore, so it obviously wasn't a sign of pregnancy. Moreover, even if she was really pregnant, she definitely wouldn't let Luo Jiajun and the others know. Luo Jiajun, Wei Min, and the others had their own thoughts when they saw that Yun Jian was too lazy to say anything else after replying. Not long after, Yun Jian finished her meal and left. From the beginning to the end, she did not pay any attention to Luo Jiajun, Wei Min, and the others. Captain Zhou came to see Yun Jian for the last time. He brought Yun Jian the last news about Sister Biao, who was also Lin Jiayue. Lin Jiayue's family was very wealthy. Her family's cash flow was enough to buy 10 of the largest and most expensive private helicopters in one go. Men tend to be fickle when they have money. Lin Jiayue has a father who has multiple wives. Modern society didn't allow polygamy. Lin Jiayue's biological mother died early, and her stepmother married her father. Lin Jiayue's father also kept as many as 10 female students or mistresses in their 20s. Later, Lin Jiayue's father simply brought his mistress and the children they had outside home to live together. Only one wife could register a marriage certificate. However, the country didn't stipulate that one couldn't keep mistresses, nor did it stipulate that everyone couldn't live together. Lin Jiayue's father had many sons and daughters, so it didn't make much of a difference. Moreover, Lin Jiayue's father favored boys over girls. Because Lin Jiayue was a girl, he had always disliked her. Lin Jiayue grew up in such a family. She was bullied by her half-siblings and her father's mistresses since she was young. She grew up without any sense of existence, so she yearned to become stronger. It was also because of this that she began to madly learn taekwondo, judo, and so on just to become stronger. She wanted to be like a well-liked boy, and she wanted her only biological father to pay attention to her. In school, she bullied others because she wanted people to pay attention to her. All of this was recorded in Lin Jiayue's codebook. Captain Zhou handed the last page to Yun Jian and said, "This codebook should be the deceased's diary when she was alive. You're mentioned in it." Yun Jian took it and flattened the pages of the codebook. She saw that the last page of Lin Jiayue's diary was written on it. "Not long ago, I saw Ling Chanxian despising her father in the market again. Her father was poor and sold vegetables in the market, but her father was really good to her, so good that it made me envious. When can my father be like her father and care about me a little more? Even if it's just a little more, even if our family is as poor as her family, or even poorer, it doesn't matter. I have hands and feet. I can support my father and myself. I don't care about money. I just want to live with my parents." So when I saw Ling Chanxian, I couldn't help but want to bully her. I want her to understand that she should treat her father better, even if her father is just a farmer who sells vegetables. Oh, by the way, I met a very beautiful girl today. She has a strong aura and is very domineering. She's my type. She saved Ling Chanxian from my hands. I heard that her name is Wei Lin, the youngest daughter of the Wei family who just returned to the Wei family. She was also bullied by her sister, Wei Min, but she's so powerful. I heard that she dared to directly fight back against her so-called sister. If I can be as powerful as her one day, then I won't be bullied by them. I really want to be friends with her. I don't know if I'll have the chance in the future, hehe. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2361. Seeing the last sentence, Yun Jian's red arc slightly closed, and her long eyelashes fluttered up and down. Captain Zhou didn't notice these subtle expressions at all. At that time, Captain Zhou couldn't find any change in Yun Jian's expression when she saw the last page of Lin Jiayue's diary. "Can you give me this codebook?" Yun Jian didn't raise her head to look at Captain Zhou and asked bluntly. Originally, the deceased's belongings should be handed over to the deceased's relatives, but I think the deceased's relatives don't care. Even the body of the deceased was claimed by the deceased's nanny. "Take this codebook if you want it," Captain Zhou said to Yun Jian after hearing Yun Jian's words. "Thank you," Yun Jian said softly, then turned and left. 5 days later. It was a sunny day, but the temperature difference between day and night was huge. In the winter night, the cold wind was bone-chilling. It could make people shiver all over and their legs tremble. It was daytime when the sun was high up in the sky. If people walked to a dark place, they would also shiver from the cold. However, if they stood under the sun, they could feel the warmth of the sun. It wasn't hot at all. Lin family. After Lin Jiayue's death, her body was taken home by Lin Jiayue's nanny. She was cremated at the crematorium and brought back an urn. There was no intention of holding a funeral inside or outside the Lin family. At this moment, Lin Jiayue's father, Lin Xingyuan, was holding a banquet to entertain his business friends. Lin Xingyuan didn't intend to hold a funeral at all. He just wanted to use the funeral of one of his daughters to hold a big banquet, make friends in the business world, and try to expand his company. Lin Xingyuan wasn't good-looking. His skin was so rough that it was difficult to look at it directly. He had big ears, a big mouth, and a big nose. His face was flat and rectangular, and he was only 161 centimeters tall. At this time, Lin Xingyuan was holding his mistress, Zhang Xiaomei. Zhang Xiaomei was 168 centimeters tall. When she stood next to Lin Xingyuan, there was a stark difference in height. Dear, say, Lin Jiaoyue has already passed away, and this urn is placed at the entrance of our living room. How ominous is that? If you ask me, let's throw that thing out the door. My dear, I say this for the good of our family. How ominous would it be if so many big bosses came up tonight and saw that urn? What a disappointment, right? At this moment, Zhang Xiaomei was about to stick her full breast to Lin Xingyuan. She used all her strength to blow air into Lin Xingyuan's ear. Good. I'll do as you say. Lin Xingyuan patted Zhang Xiaomei's butt and nodded. Zhang Xiaomei was only 20 years old. She was young enough to be his new mistress. She was pretty, and most importantly, she was good in bed. After Lin Xingyuan agreed with Zhang Xiaomei, he hurriedly called the Lin family's only nanny over. Lin Jiaoyue's mother passed away early, so Lin Jiaoyue was raised by her nanny. Lin Jiaoyue's death caused the nanny to be in pain and worry for the past few days. When she heard that Lin Xingyuan was going to move Lin Jiaoyue's urn from the Lin family's living room to the door, the nanny's tears instantly fell. She stood up and resisted Lin Xingyuan for the first time. Master, Yu is also your daughter. She hasn't been buried yet, so let her stay at home for a while. It's cold outside, I'm afraid of her. I'm afraid of her catching a cold. As the nanny spoke, her tears couldn't stop falling. Her good daughter, wow. She was only in her teens, and at such a young age she had already entered heaven. Moreover, was there no room for her ashes in the house? Is this family yours or mine? You don't want to let it go. Could someone move the urn and all the wreaths, these ominous things out? Lin Xingyuan was so angry that a lump of air came out of his nose and he roared. Someone immediately walked over to throw the urn and wreaths, which symbolized Lin Jiaoyue's farewell, out of the Lin family's door. The nanny cried as she rushed over to stop them, but she was pushed to the ground. Just as the mistress Zhang Xiao smirked and her plan succeeded, the door was suddenly kicked open. The solid door was uprooted and kicked over 10 meters away, almost crushing one of the guests. At that moment, a beautiful girl who had stopped outside the door and entered, immediately appeared in front of everyone's frightened eyes. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2362. When Yun Jian appeared in front of everyone present was so shocked that they trembled violently. Who was this young girl who suddenly appeared in front of everyone? Looking at her age, she shouldn't be more than 18. An 18-year-old girl had actually kicked away a huge door with a single kick. What kind of leg strength did she have to be able to do that? Everyone present was shocked by Yun Jian's kick. Lin Xingyuan and Zhang Xiaomei were no exception. But after regaining his senses, Lin Xingyuan stared at Yun Jian with vigilance and asked, "Who are you? Do you know where this is? How dare you trespass on private property?" However, Yun Jian only raised her head slightly and glanced at Lin Xingyuan from the corner of her eyes. Then, she walked to the side of the Lin family's hall and walked to an inconspicuous corner. That was where Lin Jiaoyue's urn was originally placed. Security! Security! Get him out of here! Seeing Yun Jian walk to the place where Lin Jiaoyue's urn was placed, Lin Xingyuan shouted loudly in an exaggerated tone. What Lin Xingyuan was afraid of was, of course, not that Yun Jian would destroy Lin Jiaoyue's urn, but that he was frightened by Yun Jian's kick just now. He was afraid that Yun Jian would turn around and deal with him. Just as Lin Xingyuan was shouting in a frightened voice, the nanny suddenly gritted her teeth and rushed 2 steps in front of Lin Xingyuan. Then, in front of all the guests, she knelt down in front of Lin Xingyuan. "Master, I beg you. Today is Yu Yu's last day in the Lin family. Don't let her leave sadly. That little girl should be Yu Yu's friend. Let her send Yu Yu off. I beg you. I beg you, master." The nanny couldn't stop crying. She kowtowed to Lin Xingyuan while pleading loudly. After all, the nanny had worked in the Lin family for decades. Moreover, she was his own flesh and blood, so Lin Xingyuan nodded and agreed after hearing this. However, just as Lin Xingyun was about to nod and agree, "Dear, I've seen Ye's friend before. That woman just kicked our door in front of Ye's morning hall. She's definitely not Ye's friend. Also, putting the urn in the main hall is really inauspicious. My dear, don't you love me anymore?" Annoying, annoying. Zhang Xiaomei grabbed Lin Xingyuan's hand and used her chest to touch Lin Xingyuan's head while acting coquettishly. "My dear, you're right. Go and get the urn and all that stuff out. Put it at the back door." Hearing Zhang Xiaomei's coquettish voice, Lin Xingyuan's lower body tightened. He quickly listened to Zhang Xiaomei's words and asked someone to move Lin Jiaoyue's urn to the back door. She didn't even allow Lin Jiaoyue to leave the Lin family's main gate. However, as soon as Lin Xingyuan finished speaking, a ping-pang sound was suddenly heard. Hearing this voice, everyone looked in the same direction. Not far from where the sound came from, Yun Jian was already standing in front of Lin Jiaoyue's urn. They saw a clean butterfly knife thrown directly on the table by Yun Jian. After making a loud noise in this quiet place, it appeared in front of everyone. Suddenly seeing this clean butterfly knife, everyone's face suddenly froze. At that time, Yun Jian was looking at the black and white photo of Lin Jiaoyue's smiling face above Lin Jiaoyue's urn. She was expressionless in front of everyone present. When everyone's faces changed dramatically in horror, she said, "You and I are the same. We both live in a world where we can't help ourselves. You said that you want to be as powerful as me, and I also want to be as ordinary as you. This butterfly knife has been with me for more than 10 years. The number of souls that died under my butterfly knife is exactly 5,000, no more, no less. Now I'm giving it to you. I'll accept your wish for you. Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2363. Yun Jian's words instantly stirred up the shock and fear of all the guests present. Even some people's faces gradually turned as white as a sheet of paper at a speed that outsiders could clearly see. Fear, horror. There was not a single person in the crowd who was not affected by these three words. For a moment, the scene was so quiet that even the sound of breathing could be heard clearly. Everyone maintained a stunned expression, and no one dared to take the lead and make a sound. Among them, Lin Xingyuan and Zhang Xiaomei's expressions were the most exaggerated. After hearing Yun Jian's words, Lin Xingyuan and Zhang Xiaomei's faces completely froze. The two of them were so frightened that their faces changed drastically, and even their bodies started to tremble violently. What did she just say? She said that the souls of the deceased under the butterfly knife were exactly 5,000 people, no more, no less. This 5,000 people. Could it be that the souls of the deceased under the knife, a total of 5,000 people, were all killed by this girl standing in front of Lin Jiaoyue's urn and portrait? Who is she? How could she kill so many people? Lin Xingyuan never imagined that Yun Jian was such a terrifying existence. He was so frightened that he almost suffocated. You, what do you want? Recalling the scene when Yun Jian kicked over the door when she appeared, Lin Xingyuan was so frightened that his whole body trembled. Then he stared at Yun Jian and asked in a trembling voice. Zhang Xiaomei, who was standing beside Lin Xingyuan, rolled her eyes and suddenly glared fiercely at Yun Jian. Then, she leaned over to Lin Xingyuan's ear and whispered a few words. This little friend, thank you so much for coming here to see you for the last time. As her father, I really welcome you. I wonder if you have any requests, you can ask me." Lin Xingyuan looked at Yun Jian with his ugly and fat face and spoke with a fawning expression. "Come here," Yun Jian said expressionlessly as she glanced at Lin Xingyuan from the corner of her eyes. After saying that, Lin Xingyuan obediently ran over. While running over, Lin Xingyuan also carefully looked at Yun Jian. This little girl is so pretty. If he could be like Zhang Xiaomei, that little slut, and take this little girl into his harem." Lin Xingyuan had an evil thought in his heart. This little girl was only 2 years younger than Zhang Xiaomei. Although he was 1 or 2 years older than them, he was rich. Moreover, an older man would dote on her. Lin Xingyuan muttered in his heart, could it be that this little girl had taken a fancy to him? After all, There weren't many men who were as rich and doted on women as he was. While thinking, Lin Xingyuan arrived in front of Yun Jian. Yun Jian had already noticed that Zhang Xiaomei had sneaked out the door, but she was too lazy to pay attention to her. Instead, she stood in front of Lin Xingyuan and threw a white piece of paper in front of him. "Pick it up and read it." Lin Xingyuan was afraid that Yun Jian would make a move on him. He quickly picked up the white note on the ground and read it. "You, Daddy loves you." What the hell was this? Lin Xingyuan was just thinking about it when he saw Yun Jian take out a codebook that wasn't too thick, but it wasn't too thin either. She asked him to get someone to bring a basin of fire. Yun Jian burned the codebook in front of everyone. Other than Yun Jian, no one else knew or saw that there was a small piece of paper on the last page of the codebook. That small piece of paper, along with the codebook, was completely buried in the basin of fire. A second before it was destroyed, Lin Jiaoyue's fresh and delicate words were still flickering in the light of the fire. "My wish, I really want to hear Daddy say it again. You, Daddy loves you." Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2364. No one knew what Yun Jian was doing just now. They all thought that Yun Jian was crazy. But at this moment, as the master of the Lin family, Lin Xingyuan didn't say anything. Naturally, the VIPs and guests who were invited to the Lin family were even more unwilling to appear. When the small note and codebook in front of everyone's eyes completely disappeared along with the fire in the basin, Yun Jian turned and walked towards the door when the fire in the basin started to fade. Behind Yun Jian was the flickering fire, and Yun Jian walked towards the Lin family's door under everyone's eyes. She accepted her wish on her behalf. She didn't have the right to care about other things. Everyone had their own fate. Yun Jian wasn't someone who meddled in other people's business. Just as Yun Jian walked out of the Lin family's door, Zhang Xiaomei, who had snuck out just now, suddenly brought a group of bodyguards and blocked Yun Jian at the Lin family's door. That's her. She was so cocky just now. She even threw a knife in front of Lin Jiaoyue and said something like, "The number of souls that died under my butterfly knife is exactly 5,000 people." So cocky, so cocky. Zhang Xiaomei brought a group of bodyguards and blocked Yun Jian's way. "Little girl, you're so young, but you know how to brag? You even said that you killed 5,000 people? So cocky? Then little girl, may I ask when you started killing people? 8 years old? Or 9? Ha, you don't even have a draft when you're lying. You kill people every day. It's extremely difficult for you to kill 5,000 people. Even professional killers aren't as cocky as you. I'm impressed by your bragging. I can't help but be impressed." Ha. When one of the bodyguards heard Zhang Xiaomei's words, he chuckled and said coldly. At this moment, Lin Xingyuan and the guests in the room were all gathered at the door. Zhang Xiaomei actually went to call the bodyguards to save the situation. This group of bodyguards has been through life and death situations. I heard that they once rescued their employer from the hands of an international top-secret agent. That's why Big Boss Lin hired them. No matter how good this little girl is, she can't go against the heavens. I reckon that not long after this little girl's bragging will explode. Someone said excitedly, "There's going to be a good show. This little girl is really brave, but it's useless no matter how brave she is. The surrounding people started to discuss again. When Lin Xingyuan heard what the people around him said, he lifted his head smugly, no longer looking fearful of Yun Jian like he did just now. At the same time, Yun Jian, who stood in front of the bodyguards, suddenly took out a transparent glove from her pocket and put it on slowly in front of everyone as she spoke. "I'm not sure if I'll be able to do anything." A bodyguard from the International Olin Group Bodyguard Company? Hearing this, the group of bodyguards standing in front of Yun Jian, who were excitedly watching Yun Jian put on the glove, were stunned. One of the bodyguards stood in front of Yun Jian and said, "How did you know?" Hearing this, the guests, Lin Xingyuan, Zhang Xiaomei, and the others were all stunned. However, before the crowd could react, Yun Jian spoke again. Her voice was mixed with a hint of arrogance. The next moment, the words that came out of her mouth made everyone present feel a wave of fear. "Coincidentally, I have a grudge against the International Olin Group bodyguards. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, I'll send you on your way. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com. Wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 2365. As soon as Yun Jian finished speaking, the surrounding people didn't even know when Yun Jian held the two shiny butterfly knives in her beautiful hands that had just put on transparent gloves. When everyone present reacted to Yun Jian's words, their hearts suddenly trembled and their faces suddenly changed. Lin Xingyan, who was standing not far away, suddenly stared at Yun Jian and said loudly, "Your weapon. Isn't your weapon already on the table in front of the morning hall? Why do you still have a knife on you?" Just now, Yun Jian placed her only weapon in front of Lin Jiaoyue's urn and portrait. The clothes she was wearing weren't thick. Just from the appearance, it seemed that she had already handed over all her weapons. That was why Lin Xingyuan dared to stand in front of all the guests and take the lead to look directly at Yun Jian. Hearing this, Yun Jian didn't reply to Lin Xingyuan's words. She just held her two butterfly knives and rubbed the blades of the two butterfly knives against each other. Then her eyes slightly raised. "What did you say? The previous chairman and president of our Olin Group bodyguard company were killed by you. Then you are..." The bodyguard who represented the bodyguards to speak to Yun Jian heard Yun Jian's words and spoke again in a frightened tone. The sudden change in the bodyguard's expression made everyone present dumbfounded. "What's going on? The previous chairman and president of our Olin Group bodyguard company suddenly died. I heard that it was done by a woman who was 1.65 meters tall, had a slender figure, and wore a ghost mask on her face. That woman carried a Gatling gun in front of all the company's executives and directly killed the previous chairman and president in the company's board of directors meeting. In the future, the company's executives directly issued an order that if we meet that woman in the ghost mask in the future, we must back down." Another bodyguard trembled as he recounted what had happened that year in front of everyone present. The meaning of these words was that the bodyguards of the International Olin Group Bodyguard Company must never provoke the other party. Even if they didn't listen to their employer's orders, they were not allowed to provoke that terrifying woman. "Oh, I thought that those guys would secretly send people to hunt me down. I didn't expect that they would forget about the past and even order their subordinates not to attack me." When Yun Jian heard the bodyguard's words, her deep eyes narrowed slightly and her beautiful red arc calmed down. Could it be that this girl was someone that even the International Olin Bodyguard Company didn't dare to provoke? After hearing the bodyguard's words, Lin Xingyuan's heart suddenly trembled, but he suddenly let out a big sigh of relief. Since she knew that her former enemy didn't care about the past and decided to make a move on her, then this young lady probably wouldn't make a move on this group of bodyguards, right? At this moment, Lin Xingyuan was afraid that he would be implicated, so he was so scared that his expression changed. He forced a harmless smile on his face. Just as Lin Xingyuan was thinking this, Yun Jian's crisp voice sounded as expected, "Then I won't kill you." After these words were spoken, for some reason, under Yun Jian's oppressive aura, everyone heaved a huge sigh of relief. Lin Xingyuan also heaved a huge sigh of relief. However, just when Lin Xingyuan and everyone present thought that Yun Jian would stop, a scene that made everyone forget to breathe suddenly occurred in the next second. Just as Yun Jian was about to hide the butterfly knife at the tight part of her thigh, she fiercely swung the butterfly knife in one hand. In front of everyone present, she controlled the timing and strength of the butterfly knife's blade and threw it more than 10 meters away, directly stabbing one of the bodyguards in between the eyebrows. This bodyguard was the one who said that Yun Jian was really good at bragging. The knife pierced 3 inches into the wood between the eyebrows. This bodyguard was already dead before he even realized the danger. He directly fell to the ground, dead. When everyone saw this, they were so frightened that their faces suddenly changed. In the next second, Yun Jian's red arc curved. She pursed her lips again in front of everyone present, and then her cold words made everyone present tremble in fear. "This is a meeting gift for you. Let me tell you, the new chairman of the Olin Bodyguard Company, don't think that I don't know what he's doing behind my back. Otherwise, I'll go over and take his dog life at any time. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2366. Yunjian's words rang clearly in everyone's ears, triggering their fear and dread to the point that their faces paled. Lin Xingyun was so scared that his face was trembling, his lips and teeth were trembling, and his originally sharp eyes became lifeless in an instant. Lin Xingyun was so scared that he wanted to hide behind the guests. "Dear, I'm scared." At this moment, Zhang Xiaomei, who thought she was very smart and had even taken the initiative to call for the bodyguards, grabbed Lin Xingyuan with a face full of shock and fear. She hid behind Lin Xingyuan. "Dear, save me. I'm scared. That woman is too scary. She will kill, she will kill." Zhang Xiaomei said as she grabbed Lin Xingyuan's hand and pushed him in front of Yunjian. Lin Xingyuan saw that timid and scared look, and his face suddenly changed. Lin Xingyuan's body that was pushed by Zhang Xiaomei to Yunjian because of fear was also supported by Lin Xingyuan himself, and only then did he stabilize himself. At first, he wanted Zhang Xiaomei to be his mistress because not only was she young, but she also said that she loved him. She said that she would give up everything for him, even her life. If a bad person appeared one day, she would be the first to stand in front of him and protect him. When Lin Xingyuan heard this and saw Zhang Xiaomei's face full of vows, he really believed her. He thought that she was an innocent and pure girl who really loved him and was willing to die for him. But if Yunjian really wanted to kill them, Zhang Xiaomei would run over and hide behind him, and she would push him towards Yunjian. If Lin Xingyuan didn't stand firm, he would have already thrown himself towards Yunjian. It was conceivable that after Yunjian killed one of the bodyguards, he would fall and hit the muzzle of the gun, and what would happen to him? It was also at that moment that Lin Xingyuan's mind suddenly jolted. His face trembled as he suddenly recalled that a few decades ago, there was once a daughter that he loved to the bone who grabbed his hand and calmly said to him, "Don't worry. Daddy, Yaya loves you." It was the kind of love a daughter had for her father. In the future, if Daddy is in danger, you will be the first to rush in front of Daddy. No matter how many demons there are, you will defeat them all. The scene changed. He and his daughter were blocked by a large wolfhound. His little daughter stood in front of the wolfhound and stopped it. She said to her father, who was standing behind her, "Don't be afraid, Yu is here. Yu will always protect you." However, the daughter who had once stood in front of him and declared that she would protect him forever would no longer have the chance to stand in front of him and say those tender but touching words. Never again, there was no chance. Since when did his precious daughter become one of his many children, an existence that he could do without? That fearless child who stood in front of him the moment he was in danger, reaching out with his short little hands, now, they had become ashes that could be held in a small hand in front of the morning hall. Perhaps when the wind blew, that small handful of ashes would disappear into every corner of this world, never to be found again. Lin Xingyuan, who suddenly thought of this, had tears in his eyes. He suddenly shouted, "Yu!" He turned around and pushed Zhang Xiaomei away and rushed to the morning hall of the Lin family's villa. Almost at the same time, Lin Xingyuan ran and knelt in front of Lin Jiaoyue's morning hall. His brows were wrinkled into waves, and tears flowed down his face. God would not forgive those who did wrong easily. If you did something wrong, you would need to pay the same price in exchange. Yunjian turned her head and looked at Lin Jiaoyue's portrait in front of the morning hall again. Then, she turned around and left without any hesitation. Go, Cherish. Once you miss a person, you will never meet again. This was fate. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2367. The bodyguards of the Lin family naturally didn't dare to stop Yunjian from leaving. Therefore, no one said anything about Yunjian's departure. 3 days later, the fencing competition would officially begin. The fencing competition that had been delayed due to the murder case was finally about to begin. The students of the Imperial College were extremely excited. On the night before the competition, Yunjian and all the students who were participating in the competition were called together to visit the palace of the Imperial College. Everyone knew that the first dean of the Imperial College in the last century was John, an aristocrat of Country Y's palace. He was also an artisan. After John came to Country Z and founded the Imperial College, the first thing he did was to order people to build a palace that was similar to the palace of Country Y. The architectural style of the palace was pure Country Y. Usually, the palace of the Imperial College was locked with a key from the outside. Only when the annual fencing competition was approaching would the registered students be allowed to visit the palace. At this moment, Yun Jian was walking towards the palace of the Imperial College with a group of students who were participating in the fencing competition. Wei Lin, you're here too? Let's go together. Luo Jiejun's voice came from behind Yun Jian just as she was walking towards the palace with a group of people. Needless to say, Luo Jiejun's tone was very cheerful when he saw Yun Jian. Yun Jian didn't turn around, so Luo Jiejun brought Hong Ling and Wei Min to Yun Jian. Wei Zhe was played by Yun Jian last time and couldn't move his hands no matter how hard he tried. Therefore, he could only give up this fencing competition. At this moment, Wei Min found Yun Jian to be more and more of an eyesore. Not only did she steal Brother Jun from her, she even beat up her brother until he didn't know what was going on. His hands couldn't move and he had no choice but to withdraw from the competition. However, just as Wei Min was about to say something unpleasant to Yun Jian, a voice was one step ahead of Wei Min and suddenly sounded in front of everyone. Wei Lin Air. I'm coming, haha, let's hurry up and choose the flower sword. If we're late, those little bastards will snatch it away first. Everyone felt a gust of wind blow past them, and then a figure appeared beside them. As Luo Jiechun ran to the front of the crowd, he put his hand on his crotch and fastened the zipper. Those who knew what was going on knew that Luo Jiechun had just gone to the toilet. He didn't even have time to zip up his pants before he ran out. Those who didn't know would think that Luo Jiechun had rushed over after visiting a prostitute. Puff, what the hell are you doing? When Hong Ling saw Luo Jiechun's strange look, he grabbed a handful of his short red hair and laughed out loud. Get lost. He's just like my brother. I can't be bothered to see you. Luo Jiechun pushed Hong Ling aside and walked over to Yun Jian. He said to Yun Jian, don't worry. Wei Lin, let's go quickly. If it's too late, all the swords for tomorrow's fencing competition will be taken away. One of the main reasons he came to the palace was because there were many flower swords hidden inside the palace. Fencing was another name for the sword used in fencing competitions. Not only were there many flower swords hidden inside the palace, there were also many names, portraits and statues of the fencing geniuses from the Imperial College that were hidden in the palace. The college allowed the students to come here every year. Other than choosing a suitable flower sword for their competition, they also wanted the students to visit the names, portraits and statues of the fencing geniuses from the past, and remember the glorious history of the past. Everyone quickly came to the interior of the palace, but just as they arrived at the interior of the palace, Yun Jian didn't see any flower swords to choose from. Instead, she saw a tall and familiar handsome man wearing the uniform of the Imperial College, walking towards her from not far away. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 2368. Yun Jian was slightly stunned when she saw the familiar figure before her cheeks flushed in the next second. Although there was no change in her expression, Luo Jiejun could clearly see the change in Yun Jian's gaze when she saw Ce walking over. It was something he had never seen on her face before. Who are you? Luo Jiejun extended his arm almost instinctively to stop Ce. Just as he extended his arm, Ce grabbed Luo Jiejun's wrist without even looking at him and broke it with a crack before tossing the man aside. Then, Ce grabbed Yun Jian's hand and walked to a corner of the palace without a word. F***CK. Luo Jiejun's hand was broken. He spat out a curse, but he didn't chase after them. In a hidden corner of the palace, Ce pinned Yun Jian against the wall and nibbled on her soft lips. It was only when the storm was over that he pulled her into his arms. Xiao Jian, I've settled everything. I'll stay here with you, Ce's low voice rang. Be it in Hun Group or Deity Continent, there were tons of things waiting for him to do. In spite of it, Ce had already settled everything and enrolled in Emperor Academy to stay by her side. It was uncertain when the mysterious person would open the passage from Deity Continent to Puluo City, but Ce knew that he had to stay here with her. Yun Jian replied as she hugged Ce. Her lips were pursed and her cheeks were rosy. It was a pretty sight. What followed was another round of passionate kisses like a storm. By the time Yun Jian and Ce came to the public side by side, Luo Jiajun had already reattached his hand that was broken by Ce. Luo Jiajun was a martial artist, so reattaching a broken hand was a piece of cake for him. Wei Linis. When Luo Jiajun saw Yun Jian and Ce coming over, he pointed at Yun Jian and asked loudly like he was catching an adulterer in the act. Luo Jiajun could clearly see that Yun Jian's lips were much redder than before, as if someone had kissed her for a long time and left a mark on them. Her man, Ce clasped Yun Jian's hand without hesitation and led Yun Jian past Luo Jiajun. Ce had enrolled in school and signed up for the fencing competition, but he did not bother to take part. Both of them chose their fangs. They were supposed to stand where they were with the other students and wait for them to choose their fangs before they left. However, Ce held Yun Jian's hand and stood beside an antique window on the 3rd floor of the palace, asking Yun Jian, "Xiao Jian, can we jump?" He was going to take her to skip school. There were teachers on the 1st floor, so the fastest and most convenient way to skip school was to jump down from the 3rd floor of the palace. Yun Jian nodded. The 3rd floor was a piece of cake. Then, Ce held Yun Jian's hand and leaped down from the 3rd floor of the palace with her to the outside. They left the school by jumping over the wall. Ce was not interested in school. There was only one thing he was interested in, her. When Yun Jian got into Ce's Lamborghini sports car, Ce told Yun Jian, "The mystery man will probably take action soon. I'll always be with you, I won't let you get hurt." Ce would only say this when there was no one around. Yun Jian nodded. Ce glanced at Yun Jian and stared at her soft red lips. Unable to hold himself back, he kissed them again. In the end, his hand found its way to her buttocks. Just as he touched her buttocks, however, Ce felt a trickle of water. He frowned and raised his hand to take a look, only to see that the water flowing on his hand was blood. Please remember the domain name of this book. .com. Wonderful Book Mobile Version Website. .com. Chapter 2369. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Ce had seen plenty of blood. Be it the blood of the dead or the living, it made no difference to Ce. He had never panicked at the sight of human blood. This time, however, Ce paused and stopped what he was doing. His piercing gaze was fixed on Yun Jian's pale lips, his previous aloofness and nonchalance turning into endless panic. "Xiao Jian, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" The amount of blood was nothing like when his Xiao Jian was on her period. Once Ce was done with his panicked words, he did not even bother to open the door. He kicked it open and scooped Yun Jian up, leaving the Lamborghini sports car behind to carry Yun Jian to Emperor Academy's infirmary. Ce's expression was terrifyingly dark. It was only when something happened to Yun Jian that his aloofness would change completely. His Xiao Jian was fine in the palace just now, but after jumping down from the 3rd floor, once he thought about it, Ce clenched his fists that were carrying Yun Jian. If he was not in a hurry to send Yun Jian to the hospital, he would probably punch himself to death. The Imperial College had its own school doctor's office, and the medical equipment was considered to be very complete in the college. Many illnesses, including women's private matters, could be handled by the Academy's infirmary. Hence, Ce carried Yun Jian all the way here. His tall and handsome figure attracted a lot of attention from the Academy, but Ce did not care. They passed by Emperor Academy on their way to the palace that Yun Jian and Ce had visited just now. On the 3rd floor of the palace, Luo Jiajun grew increasingly agitated when he saw Yun Jian and Ce leaving. In the end, he ditched Wei Min, Hong Ling, and the others and hurried to apply for leave from the teacher and left. Wei Min did not bother to stay with Hong Ling either. She stood by the ancient window on the 3rd floor of the palace in a huff, her mind drifting away. "Hey, isn't that the transfer student who just came today? He's so handsome. How can there be such a handsome guy? He's carrying a girl too." It's true. He's so handsome. I used to think that our school's Master June was the most handsome person in the world, but after seeing this transfer student, I realized that I don't even want to look at him anymore. Two girls who were standing by the window not too far away when they saw a handsome figure running by Yun Jian from the bottom of Emperor Academy. They covered their faces in excitement. Their voices attracted Wei Min's as well. The man who carried Wei Min was running translation was carrying Wei Min translation. Translation. When Wei Min saw this, her eyes twitched fiercely. In the next second, she turned around and went down the stairs of the palace. She casually applied for leave from her teacher and left the palace. Before Yun Jian could react and explain herself, C had already carried her to the school doctor's office and placed her on the examination bed. The school doctor in charge of the examination was a female doctor. After examining Yun Jian, she did not find anything wrong with her body. She was still a little suspicious. Why would her lower body bleed all of a sudden? However, in order not to be mistaken as a quack, the female doctor pressed on Yun Jian's stomach twice and concluded that the cause of Yun Jian's lower body bleeding was. The female doctor also prescribed some medicine for Yun Jian. When she passed the medicine to Ce, she saw that there was a trace of sweat on Ce's originally handsome face, which would not change even if the sky collapsed. It was obvious that he was concerned about Yun Jian's condition. The female doctor was afraid that she would be mistaken as a quack, so she pinned the blame on Ce. Young man, I see that you're young, handsome, and responsible. I didn't expect you to be such a person. You actually dared to bring your girlfriend to play a game of jumping from the 3rd floor. You're unscathed, but do you know that your girlfriend already has? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy. Chapter 2370. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Yun Jian is probably XX, page 1/1. Just now, the female doctor had asked C if Yun Jian had done any strenuous exercise before she bled profusely down there. In the end, C told her that he had jumped down from the 3rd floor of the palace with her. Oh my God! One floor of the palace was twice the height of a normal residential building. Jumping down from the 3rd floor of the palace was equivalent to jumping down from the 6th floor. The female doctor thought it was a miracle that she didn't die from the fall. What was even scarier was that the baby in the girl's stomach was completely fine. That was 2F** king amazing. Even now, the female doctor still didn't know what was going on with the pool of blood that was flowing out of Yun Jian's lower body. Dr. Jiang, have you finished prescribing the cold medicine I asked you to prescribe for me last time? However, just as the female doctor was about to finish her sentence, a clear female voice came from outside the school's infirmary. The owner of the female voice interrupted the female doctor and strode into the school's infirmary. Cough, cough. As she spoke, the owner of the female voice covered her mouth and coughed twice. Then, the owner of the female voice seemed to have suddenly seen Yun Jian and shouted at Yun Jian in shock. Wei Lin, why are you here? The person who came was none other than Wei Lin, who had seen C carrying Yun Jian into the school's infirmary. Wei Lin felt that something was amiss, so she followed along. Yun Jian merely glanced at Wei Lin and did not respond to her. Wei Lin's motive wasn't that. When she saw that Yun Jian was ignoring her, she walked over and dragged the female doctor, who was called Dr. Jiang, out of the school's infirmary. Dr. Jiang, my cold is getting worse. Please give me my medicine first. Cough, cough. Dr. Jiang was dragged away by Wei Min, but before she left, she didn't forget to say to C, all right. You can leave later. Your girlfriend is fine. Remember to take care of her body when you go back. Don't play games like jumping down from the 3rd floor of the palace next time. C heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that Dr. Jiang was fine. His clean black hair was already soaked in sweat. One could imagine how scared he was just now, but he didn't show it on his face. After Dr. Jiang walked out of the school's infirmary, Yun Jian tugged at Ce's sleeve. Ce turned to look at her. Yun Jian's Dr. Jiang, Dr. Jiang, Jiang, Dr. Jiang, Yun Jian and Jiang, Dr. Jiang, Dr. Jiang, Dr. Jiang, Dr. Jiang, Dr. Jiang, and Dr. Jiang. C, Dr. Jiang. Dr. Jiang, who had been pulled out of the infirmary by Wei Min, was dragged to a corner by Wei Min. Knowing that Wei Min was the eldest daughter of the Wei family, Dr. Jiang did not dare to provoke her. After Dr. Jiang was dragged to the corner, Wei Min crossed her arms and looked at Dr. Jiang. "I'll give you two choices. First, work for me. Second, pack up and leave." "Dr. Jiang, I think you're a smart person. You should know what to choose." Wei Min crossed her arms and said bluntly to Dr. Jiang. The Wei family was a famous and influential family in Puyo City. The children of the Wei family were all powerful people in Emperor College. Moreover, the eldest daughter of the Wei family, Wei Min, was different from the youngest daughter of the Wei family, Wei Lin. Wei Lin had been lost for many years. Among the daughters of the Wei family, Wei Min was undoubtedly the most favored. Dr. Jiang was not stupid. She immediately said to Wei Min, "Miss Wei, what's the matter? Just say it." After hearing Dr. Jiang's words, Wei Min pursed her lips and asked, "What's the situation with Wei Lin? Tell me." When Dr. Jiang heard this, she told her everything she knew. "I pressed her stomach just now. According to my experience, there's a 99% chance that she should be pregnant." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2371. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. What? Wei Min thought that she would hear something, but after hearing Dr. Jiang's words, her expression changed drastically. It was only when Wei Min realized that she had shouted too loudly that she reached out to cover her mouth. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Wei Lin was pregnant. With whom? Whose child? What did she go through before she returned to the Wei family? Could it be that the child was the child of the breathtakingly handsome man who was dozens of times more handsome than her handsome brother? How was that possible? Why? Why was Wei Lin's man better than hers? After hearing the news, Wei Min clutched her long hair tightly with both hands, her brows furrowed tightly. "She's really pregnant," Wei Min repeated through gritted teeth. In fact, Yun Jian and Wei Min were already university students. It was just that the rules of the Imperial Academy made university students' lives look more similar to high school students. It was not strange for university students to get pregnant in today's society. There were even rural families who married their daughters off at the age of 15 or 16. At the age of 18, they should be mothers of 2 children. In 2003, there were not many people who were admitted to university in this era. In the previous era, there were a lot of people who did not even study in high school, let alone go to university. If one were to push back the time to the previous century, in Qin Yu's era, one had to rely on exam results to enter junior high school from elementary school. At that time, half of the students could not even enter junior high school from elementary school. In that era, what could they do if they could not go to school early? Of course, they could go out and find a job. If they went out to work early, they would meet people early and get married and have children early. In 2003, there were many people who got married and had children early in this era. However, they had to be of legal age to get a marriage certificate from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Although Wei Min was shocked, it was not to the point of disbelief. "I've been practicing medicine for so many years. I used to be in the gynecology department. Even the gynecologists in Puyo City's People's Hospital can't compare to me in terms of belly touching. Don't worry, I'm sure of it." As soon as Wei Min finished speaking, Dr. Jiang spoke. At this point, Dr. Jiang frowned again and asked in confusion, "What's the matter?" But the strange thing is that the two of them just jumped down from the 3rd floor of the palace, which is equivalent to 6 floors of an ordinary residential building. The scary thing isn't that nothing happened to the two of them. You have to know that the first 3 months of a normal girl's pregnancy is the most important period of protection. In the end, the girl jumped down from a height of 6 stories, and the baby in her belly was completely fine. If it were anyone else, they would have had a miscarriage long ago. And her stomach is as hard as steel. It's as if she's not pregnant at all. For a girl to be able to do this, her body should be strong enough to beat up the men from the special forces. This is too scary. Dr. Jiang's words made Wei Min gasp in shock. Then, Wei Min asked Dr. Jiang, "Is there any way to make her miscarry?" After hearing Wei Min's words, Dr. Jiang was silent for 2 seconds before she said, "This is not easy to do. That girl's physique is too good. Even if you hit her stomach with an iron rod, she won't easily miscarry. But it's not completely impossible." Top reading site, M. Chapter 2372. Wei Min did not expect Yun Jian's physique to be so good. Even a man from the Special Forces could not beat her. In spite of it, Wei Min's lips curled when she heard the latter half of Dr. Jiang's words. "Wei Lin, you're dead meat." Yun Jian and Si left the school doctor's office after a short while. Yun Jian had hidden the blood bag with her because she predicted that someone would attack her soon. She wanted to test her ability. She wanted to pretend that she was stabbed and unable to fight back, causing her blood to splatter. However, she had predicted that scene. Before it happened, the blood bag broke when Si pressed her down and kissed her in the car. Before Yun Jian could explain, Si had carried her to the school doctor's office in a panic, which led to the scene just now. In fact, Yun Jian did not tell Si immediately because she wanted to see how much Si cared about her. It was only when Yun Jian saw clearly that the beads of sweat on Si's forehead had stopped flowing when he realized that the puddle of blood was actually a blood bag. Grabbing a handful of strands of black hair, he went to Yun Jian and hugged her. "Xiao Jian, don't scare me next time." He was truly afraid that something would happen to his Xiao Jian. When it came to the people he cared about, he would be extremely concerned even if they were the slightest bit injured, afraid that something would happen to them. Si cared about Yun Jian more than his own life, which was why his first reaction when he saw Yun Jian bleeding was fear. It was just that Si did not show it on his face. Yun Jian's lips curled up at Si's words as she hugged Si back. Yun Jian was sitting on the examination bed with her legs dangling on the floor while Si bent over to hug her. The angle allowed Yun Jian to rest her chin on his shoulder. When Dr. Jiang came in again, Wei Min had already left. In front of Yun Jian and Si, she didn't mention what Dr. Jiang had said to Wei Min. Dr. Jiang also pretended not to know about Yun Jian's pregnancy. She silently prescribed 2 sets of ordinary medicine for Yun Jian without saying much. "Take your medicine on time." "All right, you can leave now," Dr. Jiang said. Upon hearing this, Si grabbed Yun Jian's hand and turned to leave. Dr. Jiang, who was sitting in the school doctor's office, shook her head as she watched Yun Jian and Si leave. Sigh, of all the people they could have provoked, they actually provoked Wei Min. Looks like this young couple won't last long. At this moment, Dr. Jiang had no idea that the future of Wei Min and her would be completely ruined because of today's decision. After returning home, Si went upstairs to take a shower. Yun Jian informed Wei Xiao that she would not be going back to the Wei family today. This was a temporary suite that Si had bought. Since Si had come to Piluo City, Yun Jian was unwilling to go back to the Wei family as well. Since the blood in the blood bag was chicken blood, Si had a slight obsession with cleanliness. Other than Yun Jian, he despised anyone else's blood. After knowing that the blood left was chicken blood from the blood bag, Si went to take a shower. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was in the kitchen, cooking all sorts of dishes that she had made herself. Pickled cabbage soup, pickled cabbage fish, pickled cabbage stir-fried bamboo shoots, pickled cabbage pork blood soup. Each dish was inseparable from a pickled cabbage. When the dishes were almost done, Yun Jian turned to turn off the gas and headed to the living room. However, the moment she turned around, Yun Jian bumped into a meat wall. "Xiao Jian." Si hugged her easily. Si, who had just taken a shower, smelled fresh and fragrant. She could not help wrapping her arms around his firm chest, her ample bosom bumping against his chest involuntarily. A certain pervert mistook this as a show of affection. How could Si, a righteous youth, take it? In the next second, Si lifted Yun Jian's butt and placed her on the counter in the kitchen. Just as he placed Yun Jian beside the counter, Yun Jian wrapped her arms around his neck after a momentary daze. This action was a complete acquiescence to his naughty thoughts. Si, who could not take it in the first place, tore off Yun Jian's pants when he received her response. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version. Chapter 2373. Page 1/1. After the passionate moment in the kitchen, Yun Jian collapsed in Si Yi's arms. Si Yi carried her to the bathroom for a shower. By the time Si Yi carried her back to the bedroom, Yun Jian was already asleep. At this moment, Si Yi had no idea that Yun Jian was pregnant. Yun Jian was also unaware that she had a new life in her stomach. Perhaps it was because of the new life in Yun Jian's stomach, or perhaps it was because of Si Yi's company, but Yun Jian's vigilance had completely relaxed. She slept very deeply and peacefully. Since Si Yi had followed Yun Jian to the Imperial College, he naturally wouldn't leave anytime soon. The next day, Si Yi arrived at the Imperial College with his 5 fingers interlocked with Yun Jian's. After entering the college, Si Yi didn't care about the opinions of others. Fortunately, the students of the Imperial College came from wealthy families and had high social status. Teachers usually didn't dare to criticize the students, so even if they saw them on the way, they wouldn't say anything. Also, because today was the annual fencing competition, there were no classes for the entire day. The students arrived at the Imperial College's gymnasium early in the morning and sat in the spectator seats, waiting for the competition to begin. In the spectator seats of the gymnasium, the seats closest to the temporary fencing arena were the VIP seats. Usually, the people who sat in the guest seats were either the school's leaders or the higher-ups. Otherwise, they were the school's board of directors or important figures. After accompanying Yun Jian to the waiting area for the fencing competition, Si Yi walked directly to the VIP seats with one hand in his pocket. He casually picked a VIP seat and crossed his legs after sitting down. Above his handsome face, his starry eyes stared for a long time at Yun Jian's silhouette that had just disappeared from the waiting area. He wasn't participating. In the waiting area for the fencing competition, the students who were going to participate in the competition were already waiting in the waiting area. The competition hadn't started yet. Yun Jian walked over and picked out the one she had picked in the palace from the pile of swords. She had just turned around when she saw Luo Jiajun, Wei Zhe, Wei Min, and Hong Ling. Just as she was about to walk past them, Luo Jiajun suddenly called out to her, "Wei Lin." After speaking, Luo Jiajun was silent for a while, then said, "Be careful." Si Yi's appearance was something Luo Jiajun never expected, but he still wasn't convinced. Glancing around the waiting area, Luo Jiajun did not see Si. He had already investigated and found out that Si had signed up for the fencing competition. This meant that Si was incompetent and did not dare to go up in the arena. Seeing Yun Jian now, Luo Jiajun had nothing to say. He could only play the sentimental card and remind her to be careful in the competition later. However, after hearing his words, Yun Jian walked past him as if she didn't hear him at all. Seeing Yun Jian walk past her with such a proud attitude, Wei Min thought to herself. She was pregnant, but she still wanted to seduce her brother Jiajun. Wei Min clenched her fists and stared at Yun Jian's stomach for a long time. Not far from the audience, someone had already started a bet. Come. Place your bets. Place your bets. Who do you think will get first place in this year's fencing competition? Hurry up and place your bets. For this year's fencing competition, we'll return you 10 times the amount of your bet. Someone sat on a low stool next to the betting table, took down the names of the people who placed their bets, and shouted for them to continue placing their bets. The students here were all rich second-generation heirs, so they could still afford small bets. I heard that a very beautiful girl is also participating in the fencing competition this year. She even said that she's going to get first place. It's the Wei family's long-lost daughter, Wei Lin. Let's bet what place will she get. She's a girl? No matter how beautiful a girl is, it doesn't mean that she's strong. She's even been separated for 10 years. She's just going on stage for a show. What kind of strength can she have? I bet that she'll definitely be third from the bottom in this year's fencing competition. There were endless discussions at the scene. The staff member who set up the betting table was also writing non-stop with the pen in his hand that was used to register the bets placed by the students. However, just as the staff member who set up the betting table was making the last stroke on the registration book, The registration book in his hand was suddenly taken away, along with the black pen in his hand. Then, a handsome man who angered both men and gods took a black pen and made a tick next to the name, Wei Lin, in front of everyone's eyes. Then, he threw the registration book and the black pen back to the staff members' table. At the same time, a black card fell from the handsome man's hand into the staff member's notebook. A mellow voice then came out of Si Yi's thin lips. His words stunned everyone around him, and their faces turned pale. Bet on first place, 1 billion USD. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2374. Page 1/1. When the black card slipped out of Si Yi's hand and landed on the table of the casino staff, it was not only the staff but also the group of rich kids and second-generation heirs around them who were stunned by the sight. They didn't see wrongly. Si had just put a tick next to the name Wei Lin, which meant that he was betting on Wei Lin. 1 billion USD. Converted to RMB, it was a total of 6 billion. In this era, this amount of money was enough to be ranked on the list of the richest people in the country. One had to know that no matter how rich a rich second-generation heir was, having a few $100,000 a month of pocket money was already considered a miracle. But this handsome guy wearing the Imperial College uniform, who couldn't accept any rebuttal, actually bet 1 billion USD? This was simply an inconceivable matter. The staff stuttered with his round, dead fish eyes staring at Si. After a pause, he sucked in a deep breath before continuing. Do you really want to use 1 billion US dollars to bet? The staff thought that Si was crazy. He must have bet his entire fortune on this bet. Furthermore, he had bet on a girl. Crazy. The fencing competition at the Imperial College had a history of 50 years, and there had never been a girl who won the championship. But he actually wanted to bet 1 billion USD, a huge sum that outsiders wouldn't even dare to imagine, on a girl. The probability of losing was abnormally high. And after the bet was placed, if the bet was wrong after the competition, it would be equivalent to the entire 1 billion USD going down the drain. Can't place a bet? C.E. frowned when he heard the staff's hesitation and stuttering, obviously annoyed. No. This amount is rather large. I'll ask the higher-ups for their opinion before making a decision. Please wait a moment. The staff hurriedly made a call to his higher-ups. Within a few minutes, he received a response. The higher-ups have already agreed. May I know your name? The staff hurriedly spoke to Si in an extremely respectful tone. Who knew that Si would ignore him and only left a sentence indifferently before turning to leave. 1 million USD, remember to transfer it to this black card. What he meant was that the girl named Wei Lin was definitely not going to be the champion of this competition. Everyone present was shocked by Si Yi's words and couldn't calm down for a long time. C.E., the culprit who started the chaos, had already left. There were 3 statues placed on the fencing field for the competition. Before the competition began, Yun Jian and the other students who were participating in this year's fencing competition were invited to stand in a row in the fencing ring to listen to the host introduce the 3 statues of great figures that represented the history of fencing in front of the entire school. Of the 3 statues, one of them is the dean who founded our Imperial College in the last century, John. The taller male statue is a graduate of our Imperial College. He was a fencing genius in the last century. His talent in fencing was popular all over the world. He once sat on the seat of the world's #1 international fencing champion. For a full 20 years, no one could shake his position until his death. And the owner of that female statue is the famous female fencer from the last century, Boyas. Her fame in the field of fencing has spread all over the world. She's even more famous than the male statue. She is a legend in the field of fencing. No one has surpassed her since ancient times. Do you see the flower sword in her hand? Legend has it that as long as you have that flower sword, you will never be defeated in a fencing competition. The owner of the female statue, the legendary female fencer Boyasi, met with an accident during a voyage, and the legendary flower sword, which was said to be a guaranteed winner in a fencing competition, disappeared along with its owner. From then on, No one has seen that legendary flower sword. Top reading website. Chapter 2375. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1, Boja, a female fencer from the last century, had defeated countless world fencing champions, causing those male fencers who looked down on female fencers to lose face. Ever since she started competing in fencing competitions, she had never lost a single match. As for her legendary flower sword, it was said that as long as one held it, they would never be defeated. It was said that it was sentient. It was said that the sentient flower sword would only follow one master in its entire life. That legendary flower sword weighed at least 500 kilograms. Ordinary people would not even have the ability to lift a flower sword. Not to mention using that flower sword to spar with others. That legendary flower sword would only follow one master in its entire life. Unless its master passed away, it would then choose another master. However, the most important condition for that legendary flower sword to choose a new master was that the new master must be able to lift the 500-kilogram sword. It was also said that in the history of this world, only 3 people had ever lifted the flower sword. One of the 3 was Boyes, the last owner of the flower sword. It was said that countless people had tried to lift the 500-kilogram flower sword, but without exception, they had all failed miserably. Later on, the flower sword disappeared after its last master, Boyes, met with a mishap during a voyage. That was in 1942, a long time ago. After the host finished his speech, Wei Min looked at Yun Jian strangely, then she gave Yun Jian a disdainful smile, before speaking to the host in front of the entire school. My brother Jiajun, brother Hong Ling and I have been participating in fencing competitions since we were young, and we have heard a lot about the legendary female fencer, Boja. This year, the 4 of us have imitated the invincible sword in the female fencer's hand. It weighs 50 kilograms. I believe that our ranking this year will not be bad. Wei Min said this with confidence. As she spoke, she turned to glance at Yun Jian again. There was a glint of smugness in her eyes that could not be ignored. Oh my God! As expected of the eldest daughter of the Wei clan, Wei Min, and the young masters of the 3 great clans in Puyo City, they are indeed powerful. He could even use an imitation of the legendary flower sword of the female fencer, Boyce, to create a different flower sword. That's amazing! Someone immediately said. Ordinary flower swords were very light. Most people who used flower swords would usually choose a lighter one to participate in competitions. Of course, only when experts were fighting, the heavier the flower sword, the higher the chance of winning. Luo Jiajun turned to look at Yun Jian smugly when he heard the compliments from the people around him. He tried to see if Yun Jian's face, to see envy or respect for him. However, Luo Jiajun did not see Yun Jian's. Yun Jian, who was standing in front of the crowd, raised her brows and asked the host in front of the crowd, "Is the legendary flower sword you're talking about the one that weighs 500 kilograms? Is it made of pure gold, and has a golden rose engraved on the hilt?" The host was stunned for a moment, then nodded. That's right. According to the legend, as well as the drawings left in the books, this is how it is depicted and drawn. Lin, why are you pretending to know when you don't know? This time, I didn't expect you to participate in the fencing competition, so I didn't prepare a replica of that legendary flower sword for you. But I know that you don't know, so don't. Wei Min pretended to be a good sister again and was only halfway through her words to Yun Jian when Yun Jian was interrupted. Yun Jian cut Wei Min off right in front of everyone and said with a smirk, "You're right. I'm sorry, but that legendary flower sword is now in my hands. It is one of my collections." Top reading website, M. Chapter 2376. Yun Jian's voice trailed off. There was silence all around. Thousands of students from the entire school were seated in the audience seats. The boisterous scene was silenced at once due to Yun Jian's words. It was so quiet that even the sound of breathing could be heard if it was louder. What did she say? That legendary flower sword is now in her hands? One of her collections? What did you say? That legendary flower sword is one of your collections? That flower sword, didn't it disappear completely in the last century, early in 1942, following its original owner, Boyas, in a shipwreck? At this moment, Wei Min could no longer suppress her dark expression. She didn't even care about her identity as a good sister, and exclaimed in front of everyone present. The host also stared at Yun Jian. His hands were trembling violently. That legendary flower sword, is it really in your hands? Yun Jian did not directly reply to the host's words. She just narrowed her eyes and said, "Since my good sister can bring her own flower sword, can I too?" After hearing Yun Jian's words, the host said 3 times in a row. Not only the host, but everyone present, including Wei Min, wanted to see with their own eyes whether what Yun Jian said was true. That legendary flower sword, was it really in her hands? But it was not until Yun Jian's subordinates spent 45 minutes flying the legendary flower sword to the scene that everyone present took a deep breath. In front of him was a Baroque sword that took 10 people to move into the scene. It was gold in appearance, and anyone could tell at a glance that the Baroque sword was made of pure gold. It was the same sword that disappeared with Boja back in 1942. The person who came to move the flower sword left. When he left, he was still panting because he had moved the flower sword all the way. This is really the legendary flower sword. Luo Jiajun was stunned. He walked forward involuntarily, thinking that if he could lift this 500 kilograms flower sword in front of Yun Jian, breaking the record of being the 4th person in history to lift this legendary flower sword, then would Yun Jian be completely attracted to him. Luo Jiajun immediately reached out to lift the flower sword. However, to everyone's surprise, even if Luo Jiajun used all his strength, this legendary flower sword did not have the slightest trace of being moved. When the dozen burly men worked together to move this flower sword in, they were already sweating profusely. One could imagine how heavy this flower sword was. Found it. The flower sword that disappeared from this world for more than half a century. It appeared again. It was too magical. Amazing. Even the host put down the microphone in his hand in surprise and rushed to touch the flower sword. It was made of pure gold. However, just as everyone was attracted by this flower sword, a petite figure walked toward this legendary flower sword in front of everyone present. She's trying to lift the flower sword. She's just a girl. Oh my God. Even if she's the owner of this flower sword, she definitely can't lift it. The people around immediately noticed Yun Jian's intention and shouted out loud. Wei Min saw that Yun Jian immediately stood at the peak of everyone's attention. Even Luo Jiajun glanced at Yun Jian with a different kind of eyeball. She immediately rushed over to try to pull Yun Jian back. She said that she was trying to pull Yun Jian back, but Wei Min wanted to directly rush over and secretly push Yun Jian to the side to make a fool of her. People who are in a hurry will always come up with stupid ideas. However, just as Wei Min wanted to rush up and grab Yun Jian's hand and secretly push Yun Jian down, Yun Jian turned sideways and avoided Wei Min's push in front of thousands of people present. She directly stood beside the legendary flower sword. Then, a scene that made the whole audience boil appeared. They saw Yun Jian reach out and grab the hilt of the flower sword. In front of everyone present, she lifted this 500-kilogram flower sword as if she was lifting something less than 10 kilograms. Everyone present cheered at the same time. Shock swept through the whole audience. Just as everyone stared at Yun Jian in shock, unable to believe that she could actually lift the 500-kilogram Baroque sword and become the 4th person in the world to lift the legendary Baroque sword, Yun Jian's eyes widened. They saw Yun Jian fling the flower sword towards Wei Min as if she was swinging an arrow. Following that, everyone saw the flower sword fly past Wei Min's face by only a millimeter. Finally, it pierced into the white wall behind Wei Min. This move scared Wei Min so much that she fell to the ground, paralyzed. She looked as if she had just returned from hell and was extremely pale. The scene instantly became silent. At this moment, Yun Jian's cold and ethereal voice, like that of the Grim Reaper wandering at the edge of hell, suddenly sounded in front of thousands of people present. "Don't think that I don't know your tricks. This legendary flower sword can help me win the competition, but it can also help me kill people. Using a 500-kilogram flower sword to stab the heart. I really want to try this killing method once. Want to chat with more like-minded people about Campus Rebirth, the strongest female secret agent? Follow excellent reading literature on WeChat, talk about life, find a confidant. Chapter 2377. At this moment, Yun Jian was on a completely different level from the girl who first appeared in front of everyone who was delusional about winning this fencing competition. At this moment, she could even lift the legendary Baroque sword that weighed up to 500 kilograms effortlessly. She had lifted up the legendary flower sword that only 3 people had ever lifted up since ancient times. This action made everyone present completely believe in Yun Jian's words. Coupled with the fact that Yun Jian was holding the legendary flower sword, she threw the flower sword towards Wei Min and it directly pierced into the huge wall behind Wei Min. When everyone present saw this scene, they suddenly stood up from their respective spectator seats and stared at the scene in front of them. Sister, how can you do this to your sister? Sister was just worried that you would touch that flower sword carelessly and hurt yourself. So I wanted to stop you from touching that flower sword. When Wei Min heard Yun Jian's words, she rolled her eyes and quickly changed her words. As she spoke, Wei Min's eyes flashed with viciousness. Yun Jian had already seen through Wei Min. In front of everyone, she walked to the wall expressionlessly and pulled out the flower sword from the wall in front of everyone. Then, she held the 500-kilogram flower sword in her hand and walked towards Wei Min. Wei Lin, I also saw it just now. Your sister only wanted to stop you from taking the flower sword. Sisterhood is deep. Quickly put down the flower sword in your hand. The competition is about to start. When Luo Jiajun saw this, he also stood out and used a very reasonable tone to speak to Yun Jian. Luo Jiajun indeed did not see Wei Min's little actions, so he spoke up for Wei Min just to create an image of himself as a very reasonable person, who knew that Yun Jian did not care about him. She raised the flower sword and walked towards Wei Min. I'm your sister? I'm your sister? I'm your sister. Wei Min was so frightened that she took a few steps back. It was only when she was about to leave the fencing arena that she shouted at Yun Jian in a trembling voice. But just when all the teachers and students in the audience thought that Yun Jian would definitely not do the frightening thing that she had just mentioned, she suddenly changed her mind. Yun Jian suddenly flung the 500-kilogram sword in her hand at Wei Min. This scene scared everyone to the point that their faces froze. But just when everyone thought that the flower sword would really stab into Wei Min's heart as Yun Jian had said, Wei Min's face changed. The flower sword suddenly brushed past Wei Min's chest with a difference of 0.01 millimeters and was thrown back 5 meters into a wooden box that contained the flower sword. The dozen or so burly men who moved the flower sword to the scene just now had placed the flower sword in a wooden box and moved it to the scene. The 500-kilogram flower sword was thrown back into the wooden box, making a huge bang sound. The thousands of people present were all shocked by Yun Jian's actions just now. At this moment, everyone took a deep breath and stared at the fencing arena without exception. The petite and beautiful figure looked sideways with widened eyes and a face full of shock. After Yun Jian threw the flower sword back into the wooden box, she turned her head to look at the people who had gone up the stage with her and were participating in the fencing competition. After 2 seconds of silence, she swept her gaze across Luo Jiajun, Hong Ling, and Wei Min. That slightly raised arc deepened impudently in front of the thousands of people present. Then, she said coldly, I don't need this flower sword that was used by the female fencer of the last century, boys. The champion of the fencing competition at the end of this year will still be mine. Please remember the domain name of this book, mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2378. After that, Yun Jian did not care about the opinions of others. She glanced sideways at the dozen men who had moved the sword to the scene. When these men saw this, they immediately stepped forward and moved the sword away from the fencing field. For a time, the news of the reappearance of the legendary flower sword that was rumored to have disappeared in 1942 spread like wildfire. Yun Jian's frivolous words shocked everyone present. She had the legendary invincible sword, but she did not use it. Was she stupid? However, because of Yun Jian's words, the people sitting in the audience seats looked forward to one thing even more. That was, how far could a woman like Yun Jian go with her own strength? The host was also used to seeing ups and downs. After he came back to his senses, he quickly calmed the audience. Ha! Just now, it was a pre-match entertainment game directed and performed by our school's students for us. Everyone, please don't mind it. Then, I announced that our school's annual fencing competition has officially begun. Because there were more students participating in the fencing competition, the progress of the fencing competition was in an elimination format. There were at least 10 small fencing fields that could be used for fencing competitions. In other words, there were 10 small fencing fields that could be used for one-on-one fencing competitions at the same time. The students would use the method of drawing lots to compete with the person who drew the corresponding number. The loser would be directly eliminated, and the winner would proceed to the next round of drawing lots and continue to compete with the person who drew the corresponding number. When there were only 10 people left, the finals of the fencing competition would officially begin. During the finals, all 10 small fencing fields would be inactive. The last 10 people would compete one-on-one in the largest fencing field. In other words, there was nothing to see in the elimination rounds. When 10 small fencing competitions were held together, the audience's eyes would be overwhelmed. Only when there were 10 people left, all the small fencing fields would be inactive. One-on-one, one match would be held at the same time. At this time, it was the most interesting show. The competition would begin immediately. Yun Jian drew the number 6 for the first time. It seemed that she and 6 were really fated. However, when the boy who competed with her for the first time saw her, he remembered that Yun Jian had lifted the legendary sword that weighed 500 kilograms. Before the competition started, he admitted defeat. Yun Jian. In the next few elimination rounds, the opponents that Yun Jian met either admitted defeat in fear or kept defending when they were fencing with Yun Jian, afraid that Yun Jian would use the sword to touch their bodies. A fencing competition was a sport where two people held special steel swords and wore protective gear. They would stab or chop within a specified time and place. During the competition, one side would use the tip of their sword to stab the opponent. The sword tip would accurately stab the effective part of the opponent's body, and the side with the highest number of effective hits would win. In layman's terms, it was to use the tip of the flower sword to hit the opponent's effective part, and the side that hit more times would win. And Yun Jian's body. Let's not talk about whether the opponent could hit her or not. When she attacked, it was usually a combo. There was even a student who was participating in the fencing competition who was continuously hit in the effective part by Yun Jian's sword tip. He retreated and did not dare to open his eyes. In the end, he accidentally slipped and rolled on the ground. He was so scared that he covered his head to avoid Yun Jian's sword tip. Even the judges almost burst out laughing when they saw his comical appearance. Yun Jian's initial fencing style was not outstanding. Instead, it was the fencing style used by Luo Jiajun, Wei Min, and Hong Ling that showed off in the preliminary competition. Therefore, the audience who were initially interested in Yun Jian and felt that Yun Jian must have some ability since she was so confident before, instantly shifted their attention away. Unknowingly, there were only 10 people left in the fencing competition. This also meant that the most intense ranking competition, the finals, had officially begun. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2379. I think the youngest daughter of the Wei family, Wei Lin, can't take it anymore. She was so arrogant and cocky before, but she didn't amaze the world with a single brilliant feat in these few rounds. Wei Min's eldest daughter, Wei Min, has improved a lot compared to Bai Nian. That Wei Lin, could it be that she's bragging to stand out? Someone in the audience couldn't help but complain loudly. Hearing this, the audience all looked at Yun Jian in the fencing field. There were also a few people who had noticed that Yun Jian didn't have any amazing performance from the beginning to the end, so they all started to talk about it. I think he doesn't have much strength. That legendary flower sword just now, could it be that it was also used to put on a show? I think that Wei Lin has been very close to Luo Jiajun's younger brother, Luo Jiachen. Luo Jiachen begged his brother Luo Jiajun to help him pretend that he couldn't lift that flower sword and then put on a few shows. That's not impossible. Some people even suspected that Yun Jian's every move just now had been discussed with others, and that she was just putting on a show. Sigh, people these days are capable of doing anything. That's right. But just watch. So what if that Wei Lin reaches the finals? Luo Jiajun will help her put on a show, but the champion position of the finals won't be given to her. Later, we'll know the truth. The students in the spectator seats complained in an experienced manner. At that moment, everyone was excitedly looking at the grand fencing field in the center of the gymnasium. The draw for the finals was also over. Yun Jian drew a 5. She narrowed her eyes. The ones who drew a 1 were Wei Min and a strong male student. In the end, Wei Min won the competition with a unique move. And Hong Ling and Luo Jiachen accidentally met. The two of them exchanged moves, and in the end, Luo Jiachen won. Hong Ling scratched his symbolic red hair and left the stage with some regret. There were a total of 2 people who drew the number 5. These 2 people were, when Yun Jian and Luo Jiajun walked onto the field from the left and right sides of the field, the audience was in an uproar. This wasn't the final battle yet. Yun Jian and Luo Jiajun had already started fighting. Yun Jian, the girl who kept saying that she would be the champion of this year's competition. And Luo Jiajun, who had been the champion of the fencing competition for several years. One had to know that there had not been a single female champion in the fencing competition for a full 50 years. Yun Jian, this girl, could she really break the record of girls not being able to win the championship for 50 years and be looked down upon by all the boys? Just as the crowd began to cheer and get excited, Yun Jian and Luo Jiajun were already facing each other. The moment he saw Yun Jian, Luo Jiajun's expression changed. Then he grabbed his fencing helmet and said to Yun Jian, "You're just a girl. Girls shouldn't participate in this kind of competition for boys. You'd better stop." In Luo Jiajun's mind, these words were for the good of Yun Jian. After all, he didn't want to hurt her. But when Yun Jian heard this, she gave a cold smile. In the next second, the referee's voice announced the start of the competition. Without waiting for Luo Jiajun to speak again, Yun Jian appeared in front of Luo Jiajun in a flash with her sword in her hand in front of thousands of spectators. The moment Luo Jiajun raised his hand to stop her, the tip of the sword in her hand had already landed on Luo Jiajun's helmet. If it hit, it would count as 1 hit. Luo Jiajun reacted and was just about to deflect Yun Jian's sword that hit his helmet. With a backhand, Yun Jian used her sword to hit his torso, legs, hands, and arms 15 times in a row. In the knockout round, 15 fencing would take place within 9 minutes. The person who hit the opponent the most times would be considered the winner. But the competition had just begun, and only 10 seconds had passed on the stopwatch. Yun Jian had already hit Luo Jiajun's effective body part 15 times in just 10 seconds. Before the crowd could react, she had already turned around, pulled off her helmet, threw down her sword, and walked off the stage. At the same time, she left Luo Jiajun with a sentence that shocked everyone present. 15 consecutive fencing strikes in 10 seconds. You, the former champion of the fencing competition, are really a real waste. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2380. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Campus Rebirth, the strongest female secret agent. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 2381. Wei Min stood behind Yun Jian and shouted at Yun Jian confidently. She seemed to have a handle on Wei Min as she laughed arrogantly. Ce, who was about to leave with Yun Jian, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Even Yun Jian, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped in her tracks. When Wei Min saw Yun Jian's and Ce's reactions, she thought she had made the right bet. Her smile widened as she laughed maniacally. Then she leaned back as she laughed maniacally. I forgot that you don't know that you're pregnant. I bribed the school doctor to keep it a secret at the school's infirmary. What do you think? That handsome guy over there, you should be more careful when you find a girlfriend in the future. Our Wei family lost contact with this woman for 10 years. Who knows how many people have defiled her before? She probably doesn't even know who the bastard child in her stomach belongs to. Wei Min's words were clear and logical, as if that was really the case in reality. At that moment, Si didn't hear what Wei Min said about Yun Jian. After he heard Wei Min say that Yun Jian was pregnant, he paused for a moment. In that instant, the corners of his lips curled up into an imperceptible smile. In the next second, in front of Wei Min, Si grabbed Yun Jian's small hand and pulled Yun Jian into his embrace. He hugged Yun Jian tightly from behind and placed his hand on her abdomen. Si didn't even dare to use too much force because he was afraid that his hand would affect the child in her stomach. Wei Min's heart skipped a beat when she saw his unconcealable joy and how he doted on Yun Jian so much that he wanted to treat her with all his kindness. Could it be that the child in Yun Jian's stomach is? Before Wei Min could react to Si's actions and before Si and Yun Jian could speak, a young man with a slightly rough voice suddenly sounded. His voice was trembling and filled with disbelief. What? Wei Lin is pregnant. As soon as the voice fell, 4 figures walked out from the forest beside the school's gymnasium. These 4 figures were Luo Jiejun, Luo Jiechen, Wei Zhe, and Hong Ling. The young man's voice was none other than Luo Jiejun. Luo Jiejun had just followed Yun Jian and Si out with Luo Jiechen and the other 2. When he heard Min's words, his face turned pale. Seeing Luo Jiejun suddenly appear, Wei Min's face turned pale. However, she gritted her teeth and decided to go all the way. She changed her sharp voice to that of a girl next door and said to Luo Jiejun, Brother Jiejun, I heard it from the school doctor. She's pregnant. How long has it been since she returned to the Wei family? And the school doctor said that she's been pregnant for 2 months. She hadn't returned to the Wei family at that time. What does this mean? It's very likely that she got pregnant after fooling around outside. She got pregnant before marriage. A young lady from a wealthy family got pregnant before marriage. She's destined to be ridiculed for being lascivious and unable to endure loneliness. She's ruining the Wei family's reputation. This time, Wei Min had sufficient words to prove that Yun Jian had done bad things before she returned to the Wei family. Women in the countryside got married early and got pregnant early. However, wealthy families usually didn't take wedding leave too early, let alone getting pregnant before marriage. This would be ridiculed. Wei Min was certain that Si would dump Yun Jian after hearing about Yun Jian's pregnancy and that her brother Jiejun would change his mind. However, just as Wei Min thought so, Luo Jiejun's face turned pale. Si, who was standing in front of them, hugged Yun Jian's waist from behind and retracted his hand that was gently placed in front of her stomach as if he was protecting a treasure. Then, without waiting for everyone present, he took out a large notebook from his trouser pocket and showed it to everyone with a smile that angered both men and gods. Who said that we got pregnant before marriage? She's my wife. Whether she's pregnant or not, it's not up to you to tell her what to do. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2382. Si's words were clearly heard by everyone present. His magnetic and mellow voice was exceptionally attractive. His voice was so crisp that it was enough for women to pursue and fantasize about. That voice was like a giant bell that struck the ears of Wei Min, Luo Jiejun, and Wei Zhe. It was as if the world was falling apart, causing everyone to tremble in shock. What did you say? This child too? After hearing Si's words, Wei Min felt as if her head had been struck by a 500-kilogram object. Her body trembled violently before she came to a sudden stop. She stared fixedly at Si and spoke incoherently. The child in her stomach is yours? You guys have already gotten a marriage certificate? Luo Jiejun finished Wei Min's sentence before she could finish. At this moment, Luo Jiejun's voice was trembling as he asked this question. He was afraid that Yun Jian or Ce would say yes. They already had a child. They even got a marriage certificate. Even if the marriage certificate wasn't from country Z, even if Yun Jian wasn't of legal age to register her marriage at the Civil Affairs Bureau in country Z. However, since Yun Jian and Ce already had a marriage certificate, it was legal. Luo Jiajun trembled all over. This was the first time he was so interested in a girl, and also the first time he paid so much attention to a girl. In the end, not only was this girl married, she even had a child. Not bad, Wei Lin. You're awesome. You're even pregnant. No wonder you like eating pickled cabbage so much recently. You eat it every day for every meal. You even eat 3 times as much as me. Speaking of which, Wei Lin, if the child in your stomach is a girl, how about keeping it for me to be my future wife? I'll wait for her for 18 years. Ha. Just as the atmosphere started to subtly change, Luo Jiachen spoke in a relaxed and straightforward tone. Luo Jiachen didn't notice the subtle change in the atmosphere. He was a disobedient person who usually played games on his phone, played video games, and participated in gang fights. He was a very casual person. At that time, Yun Jian, who was called out, came back to her senses. Her expression didn't change at all, but she felt a strange feeling in her heart. She's pregnant? She was pregnant with his child? At this moment, Yun Jian's feelings were very complicated. When Yun Jian learned that she was pregnant, she was very nervous. Would she not be a good mother after the child was born? But to be honest, Yun Jian was more surprised and happy than nervous. Yun Jian's heart pounded wildly at the thought of the little life quietly growing in her stomach. Although she looked indifferent on the surface, Yun Jian's red lips, which were curled up slightly, hinted at her current mood. Hey, Wei Lin, to be honest, if you really give birth to a daughter, I definitely won't marry her in this lifetime. I'll marry her when she's 18 years old. Do you agree? If you give birth to a boy, then in 6 or 7 months, will you be able to give birth to him to play with? Grabbing, pinching, and lifting. Kids are so fun. Last time, I played with a baby until he cried, but you can't blame me. I only ravaged him a little. I really didn't do anything bad. Wei Lin, if you give birth to a boy, can you lend him to me to play with for 2 days? Babies are so fun. Their cheeks are tender, pink, and round. When you poke them with your fingers, they are as soft as a sponge. Luo Jiachen was very excited. When he said this, he looked at Yun Jian eagerly, waiting for Yun Jian to agree. But just as he said this, Luo Jiachen felt a gust of cold wind sweeping over from Yun Jian's side. Luo Jiachen pulled the corners of his mouth like a robot and turned his head in confusion. He could only see Si Yi's dark eyes, which were flashing with murderous intent, staring deeply at him. Her thin lips moved. Si Yi looked coldly at Luo Jiachen and said expressionlessly, "Do you want to die? Please remember the domain name of this book, .com. Wonderful book mobile version website, .com. Chapter 2383. These 2 simple words came out of Si Yi's thin lips, but they carried a cold and piercing murderous intent. After the chilling sound spread out, everyone present was suddenly shocked, and it took a long time for them to react. Especially Luo Jiachen. Luo Jiachen had only said what was on his mind, but he didn't expect to receive such a terrifying glare from Si. Luo Jiachen was so frightened that he trembled. He quickly waved his hands and shook his head. No, no, no. I'm not looking for death. I'm not looking for death. Big brother, I was wrong. Just pretend I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. Luo Jiachen immediately cowered. He stood behind Luo Jiajun and quickly shut his mouth. After he shut his mouth, Luo Jiachen opened his mouth and said to Yun Jian and Si, "You two really look like husband and wife. You're a match made in heaven. I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart." Luo Jiachen wasn't afraid of offending his big brother, Luo Jiajun. After he finished speaking, he stood behind a big tree and reached out to hug the tree. He hung his long legs on the tree. He cursed in his heart, "You immortals fighting has nothing to do with this young master." No one cared about Luo Jiachen's cowardice. At this moment, Wei Min, Luo Jiajun, and the others had already recovered from their shock. Actually, it wasn't just the current university students. In the year 2003, dating had become a trend among university students. As early as the old era of the previous century, the idea of dating was already outdated. As men and women dated and developed feelings for each other, it was inevitable that they would steal the forbidden fruit and lose control of their emotions. Of course, it was difficult for most couples to end up together in the end. Therefore, as a girl, she had to protect herself well. She couldn't be attracted by a few words from an ordinary guy who thought he was very knowledgeable. She couldn't fall in love with him and be cheated away. She had to remember that for people who were truly capable, even if they didn't brag, other people would know their true strength. Most of the time, people who kept talking about how powerful they were just empty words. They didn't have any real skills. It wasn't uncommon for college students to get pregnant. There were also some who secretly went for an abortion. Of course, Yun Jian and Si had gotten a marriage certificate abroad to conceive a child. Moreover, from the looks of it, they didn't intend to hide the fact that they had an abortion at all. "Jiachun, just you wait. I'll teach you a lesson when we get home," Luo Jiajun shouted angrily after hearing Luo Jiachun's words. Just as Luo Jiajun was about to speak, Wei Min, who was standing in front of Yun Jian and Si, suddenly sneered, "Here it comes, haha." As she spoke, Wei Min glanced sideways at Yun Jian. Yun Jian had long noticed that Wei Min was different from other young ladies. Wei Min was very smart, but her intelligence was used in a bad way. Yun Jian only narrowed her eyes slightly. Just as Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, a group of middle-aged people in their 40s and 50s appeared at the other end of the school path. When Yun Jian saw that group of people, her gaze paused slightly. That group of people were the upper-class families of Pyoluo City. When Yun Jian first entered the Wei family, she saw those people at the banquet that Wei Xiao held for her to return to the Wei family. And the person leading them was Wei Xiao. Wei Xiao had just arrived with his wife, Wang Ruoya. He scanned the surroundings and was stunned when he didn't see the banquet that Wei Min had told them about. "Min, didn't you send invitations to everyone in my name saying that the school would hold a banquet?" "My apologies. I've gathered everyone here today because I want to announce something to everyone. I didn't have any evidence before, so I didn't say anything. But now I've found sufficient evidence. I've already asked someone to take Wei Lin and my father's samples for a DNA test and found that Wei Lin isn't my father's biological child at all, so I want to tell everyone from the upper class that she, Wei Lin, is just a liar. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2384. Wei Min had already planned to trap Yun Jian here. However, Wei Min had never expected Yun Jian and Si to leave so early. Hence, Wei Min had no choice but to run out and call for Yun Jian and Si. However, Yun Jian and Si did not listen to her at all. In the end, Wei Min had no choice but to go all out and tell Yun Jian and Si that Yun Jian was pregnant. This was just Wei Min's way of holding Yun Jian and Si back. Wei Xiao, Wang Ruoya, and even the masters of Pyoluo City's three great families, the Luo family and the Hong family, who were the fathers of Luo Jiajun and Luo Jiachen, as well as Hong Ling's father, were all standing here. Everyone was dressed in formal attire as if they were rushing to attend the banquet. However, Wei Min was just using her father's name to send out invitations to everyone. Wei Min's motive was simple. She just wanted to expose Yun Jian's true colors in front of everyone. She was not the Wei family's youngest daughter, Wei Lin. She was an imposter. After Wei Min said this, everyone present was in an uproar. Everyone instantly forgot that Wei Min had used her father's name to trick this group of people here. They all looked at Yun Jian with great interest. This was a piece of explosive news. If one wanted to ask how Wei Min had taken Yun Jian and her father's samples for a DNA test, one would have to start with the school doctor, Dr. Jiang. Dr. Jiang picked up a strand of Yun Jian's hair and took it to do a DNA test with Wei Min's father's hair. It had not been long since Wei Min received the news. After learning that Yun Jian was not the real Wei Lin, Wei Min had arranged the show to expose Yun Jian's true colors in front of all the upper-class aristocratic families. She's not the real Wei Lin? Luo Jiajun asked with widened eyes right after Wei Min's words. Brother Jiajun, I'm not framing her. Here's the evidence. Wei Min laughed coldly and took out a DNA test report from her pocket. Everyone clearly saw that the DNA test report clearly stated that Yun Jian and Wei Xiao were not close relatives. This meant that they could not be father and daughter. After taking the DNA test report, Wei Min looked at Yun Jian with a smug expression. Then, she stood in front of Yun Jian like a winner. She raised her head and stood on her tiptoes to meet Yun Jian's eyes. She sneered and said, Yun Jian, you're amazing. You actually managed to fool my father and successfully pretended to be my sister to come to my family to enjoy a luxurious life. But there's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world. You think you're very powerful, but in fact, you can't even withstand a single blow. Tell me, who the hell are you? Are you a commoner? Street gangster? Or a beggar? It's fine if you don't want to say it. In any case, you will definitely pay for your actions. As soon as Wei Min finished speaking, she looked at Yun Jian aggressively. At this moment, Wei Xiao, who was standing at the side, suddenly took a step forward and slapped his daughter's cheek in front of everyone. Then, he said in a terrified tone, Do you want to die? How dare you talk to her like that? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Could it be that Wei Xiao knew that Yun Jian was not his daughter, Wei Lin, who had been separated from him for 10 years? At this moment, even Wei Xiao's wife, Wang Ruoya, stared and shook her head. Dad? What did you say? She's an imposter. Don't tell me you know about this? Wei Min looked at Wei Xiao in disbelief and asked loudly. But just as Wei Min finished speaking, a female voice that was as pleasant as the sound of nature had already spoken first. Of course your father knows about this. The person who spoke was Yun Jian. As soon as she said this, everyone turned to look at Yun Jian. Right in front of everyone, Yun Jian's lips curled into a red arc. A brutal, murderous intent flashed across her expressionless face as if she was a murderer. A voice that struck fear into everyone's hearts rang out at the same time. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, Wonderful Book Mobile Version Website, .com. Chapter 2385. Slaying God, the number 1 on the International Secret Agent ranking. That was a person whose name was enough to make all the top international business leaders piss their pants in fear. There was a pin-drop silence around them after she said that. All the hubbub and whispers after finding out that Yun Jian was not the Wei family's youngest daughter, Wei Lin, stopped abruptly after Yun Jian said that. The quiet path, which was not wide to begin with, was eerily silent. There were dozens of people walking around, but no one made a sound earlier. Everyone kept their mouths shut at the same time. The scene was indescribably eerie. They could still vaguely hear the cheers of the fencing competition coming from the stadium not far away. However, the group of people was eerily quiet. At that moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Yun Jian. Their eyes were wide open, and some of them even had their mouths agape. They looked as if they had been frightened by something terrifying. Especially Wei Min, who had been so aggressive earlier and wanted to dig out Yun Jian's identity and background. Wei Min's face paled at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Her cheeks, which still had some color in them, were now as pale as a sheet. What did she say? What did Wei Lin say? In her circle of friends, the group of old men referred to her as their representative, calling her Slaying God. The number 1 on the International Secret Agent ranking, the boss of the Kosha mercenaries. She had made a name for herself in the Bloody Night incident. Her ability had swept the world, causing international bosses to tremble in fear. She was Slaying God, who killed without blinking and left no trace behind. Wei Min's body began to tremble violently at the same time. She seemed to have learned something that would make one terrified to death. She was so frightened that even her lips were trembling violently. What did you say? You're... Compared to Wei Min's fearful expression, Luo Jiajun's mind shook, and he had a sudden realization. He stared at Yun Jian for 2 seconds and his jaw dropped. To Luo Jiajun, the reason why he paid so much attention to Yun Jian was because Yun Jian was very unique. Her every move and every word was different from those girls who surrounded him all day long. Luo Jiajun was not short of beauties, but Yun Jian was the only one who caught his attention. But when he found out about Yun Jian's identity, Luo Jiajun was dumbfounded. It wasn't just Luo Jiajun. Hong Ling, Luo Jiachen, Wei Zhe, Wei Xiao, Wang Ruoya, and all the people from Puyo City's upper-class society were dumbfounded. They stared at the scene in front of them, unable to return to their senses for a long time. You're not Lin. Then where did my Lin go? Lin didn't come back at all, right? Where's my Lin? Where did she go? Wang Ruoya had been watching since the beginning. Now that she heard what Yun Jian said, she did not care who Yun Jian was, but where her youngest daughter, Wei Lin, had gone. Therefore, she looked at Yun Jian and asked the question with a devastated expression. Yes, didn't you promise me that you'll find my youngest daughter for me? Then may I ask, have you found her? Wei Xiao snapped out of his shock. He looked at Yun Jian, bent slightly and asked Yun Jian. Dad, it's been 10 years. Even if she's really the slaying god, I don't think she has the ability to find my biological sister. Moreover, how can we be sure that she's the real slaying god just by listening to her one-sided story? Deep down, Wei Min believed it, but she refused to admit it. All this while, Wei Min had been treating Yun Jian as her rival, so she instinctively refused to believe Yun Jian's identity. Of course I found her. However, just as Wei Min finished speaking, Yun Jian smirked and smirked. Then, she extended a hand as if she had expected this to happen. She snapped her fingers softly. After the soft sound fell, a young girl who was much prettier than Wei Min walked out from the small forest at the side. Her facial features were similar to Wei Min's. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2386. The girl was wearing a pair of black jeans, a tight white top, and only a leather jacket. She walked out of the forest with graceful steps and gradually came to the front of everyone. Just from the girl's appearance, I can infer that this girl is definitely Wei Xiao and Wang Ruoya's biological daughter, Wei Lin. As Wei Min, who had always been against Yun Jian, Wei Min's looks were average and not considered good-looking. However, her figure was alright and was completely different from her father, Wei Xiao. As for the real Wei Lin, although her features were similar to Wei Min's, Wei Lin's looks were very accurate. Her nose was slightly high, her lips were red, and her eyes were very big. Her eyelashes made her look very cute when she blinked. She was completely different from Wei Min. She was really found. A person who had been lost for 10 years was really found by Yun Jian. The moment she saw the real Wei Lin appear, Wei Min's eyelids suddenly twitched. Then her heart suddenly tightened, and an expression of fear of being discovered after doing something bad took over her entire face. You really are my Lin. My Lin. Wang Ruoya recognized her at a glance. She rushed forward almost at the same time and hugged Wei Lin. When Yun Jian returned to the Wei family, although Wang Ruoya was happy, she couldn't find the feeling of kinship in Yun Jian. Blood was thicker than water. This was something that outsiders couldn't imitate. At least when Wei Lin appeared, her looks could be recognized at a glance. She was the real Wei Lin without even needing to do a DNA test. Thank you. Wei Lin hugged her mother back and said to Yun Jian with tears in her eyes. That thank you made Yun Jian narrow her eyes. She didn't directly respond to Wei Lin. Instead, she said something that shocked everyone present. Perhaps you should thank that good sister of yours. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't have been lost for 10 years, and I wouldn't have had the chance to find you and send you back to the Wei family. The moment these words came out, Wei Min felt guilty. She looked at Yun Jian and shouted, Nonsense! What nonsense are you talking about? I didn't. That day when I went out to play with you, you told me to stand there and wait. I waited for a long time, but you didn't appear. Later, a kind person took me away, and I've been living in that kind person's house. I always thought that you didn't do it on purpose, But not long ago I heard. At this moment, Wei Lin spoke first after Wei Min finished speaking. At this point, Wei Lin paused for a moment before saying, I heard that you've been lying to everyone that you saw me being kidnapped by a van with your own eyes, but you clearly told me to wait for you at the same place. There was no need to say anything else. Wei Lin's words were sufficient to prove that Wei Min had deliberately abandoned the young Wei Lin. Of the way of the way of the way of the way of the Wei family of the way of the way of the way of the Wei family. No, I didn't. I. Wei Min covered her ears when she was exposed for what she had done back then, her face drained of color. Still, she suddenly lunged at Yun Jian like she had gone mad, yelling and tearing at her as she did so. Ha! I did it. So what if I did it? It was you. If it wasn't for you, how could Wei Lin, that little b****, return to the Wei family? I'm still the most beloved daughter of my parents and the most beloved sister of my brother. You b****, go to hell. You're finished. You're finished. Ha. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2387. As if triggered by something, Wei Min charged at Yun Jian desperately, trying to drag Yun Jian down with her. It was over. She was done for. The scandal back then was exposed in front of Puluo City's upper-class society. From now on, there would be rumors of the Wei family's young miss abandoning her younger sister out of spite in Puluo City. As for her brother Jun, and he definitely wouldn't like her anymore, Wei Min was purely thinking that she would drag Yun Jian down with her even if she was done for. Hence, Wei Min did as she was told. Just as Wei Min was about to dash to Yun Jian like a madwoman and perish together with Yun Jian, who had been carefully wrapping his arm around Yun Jian's abdomen and protecting Yun Jian like she was a treasure, leaned her back against his chest and circled Yun Jian from behind to protect her as he spun her in a small circle. After he was done carefully, C lifted his leg and kicked Wei Min, who was about 1.6 meters tall, in the face. The force of the kick was so strong that it almost broke Wei Min's neck. Wei Min was dizzy from the kick that was filled with killing intent. She fell to the ground with a plop. She was still conscious, but her head, hands, and feet were completely numb for a short period of time. Her head, in particular, was almost torn in half by Si Yi's merciless kick. Wei Zhe, Wei Xiao, and Wang Ruoya, who witnessed the scene, cried out. Although what Wei Min had done to Wei Lin back then was already a fact, Wei Zhe, Wei Xiao, and Wang Ruoya could not bear to see Wei Min die without a corpse. Humans were not cold-blooded creatures. No one could guarantee that they would not develop feelings for someone after interacting with them for a long time. The feelings here referred to pure friendship, family, and so on. Si Yi's expression was terrifyingly dark. What Wei Min did just now was a test of his patience. How dare he face Xiao Jian's opponent right in front of him? In fact, Si Yi's kick had directly crushed Wei Min's skull. This kick was even more ruthless than killing Wei Min. Ha, you're finished, even if I die here today, you're finished too, ha. Who knew that Wei Min, who was lying on the ground, could no longer move her head? However, she opened and closed her mouth and said those words to Yun Jian without fear of pain. Upon hearing this, Yun Jian's eyes narrowed. She suddenly took out a folding fan from under her clothes. She broke away from Si Yi's embrace and walked a meter away from Wei Min. Then, she pointed the fan at Wei Min. Do you believe that I can use this fan as a dagger to seal your throat? This fan was the one that Yun Jian had taken from someone when she first met Luo Jiejun and Hong Ling when she first entered the Imperial College. She saw Hong Ling bullying someone. The fan was covered with spiritual power, which was why Yun Jian wanted it. Please don't. Min is my daughter too. Please let her go. Let her go. Wang Ruoya knelt before Yun Jian when she heard Yun Jian. Wei Zhe and Wei Xiao begged for mercy as well. When the upper-class people who were watching the show thought that Yun Jian was a kind-hearted person since she had brought Wei Lin back. However, Yun Jian flung the fan at Wei Min. She was going to kill her. When everyone saw this, they were so frightened that their faces changed. In spite of it, A figure in a black robe flashed by the forest at the same time the fan was thrown. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and smirked at the sight, as if she knew that the figure would show up when the fan was thrown. Just as the sharp end of the fan was about to seal Wei Min's throat, Yun Jian was one step ahead of the black figure and caught the fan before retreating to Si Yi's side. Then, Yun Jian smirked at the black figure. "You really showed up. Mysterious person. Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile version website. Chapter 2388. That was right. From the beginning, Yun Jian had expected Wei Min to stop her here. Hence, Yun Jian had called Wei Lin to the scene. None of this was a coincidence. Revealing her identity as slaying God in front of everyone and flinging out the fan with spiritual power was all to lure the mysterious man out. It was worth mentioning that Yun Jian and Si had planned all of this long ago. What she did not expect, however, was what Wei Min meant when she told her that she was pregnant. Yun Jian's admission to the Imperial College was also part of her plan. It was not a coincidence that she had obtained the fan with spiritual power. In other words, Yun Jian's admission to the Imperial College was to obtain this fan and lure the mysterious man out. This was because this fan was called a wooden fan. The wooden fan, the sandalwood box, and something else that Yun Jian and Si were still looking for. They would be able to rule the entire deity continent. And the thousands of continents. Naturally, they would be able to take down Earth easily. This was written in the records left behind by the ruler of the deity continent since the creation of the deity continent, who knew how many years ago. Hence, from the moment the mysterious man captured Yun Jian's younger brother and forced Yun Jian to exchange the sandalwood box for Xiao Yunju, the mysterious man had an ulterior motive. With these three things, he could easily rule the entire deity continent and the thousands of continents. The sandalwood box was one of them. And so was the wooden fan. Hence, the mysterious man had his eyes on it from the beginning. However, Yun Jian had gotten it first. Yun Jian had used the wooden fan just now to lure the mysterious man out. Tsk tisk. The mysterious man revealed a pair of deep, pitch-black eyes and stared intently at Yun Jian. He laughed arrogantly and pulled his black robe tighter around his body. Then he stared at Yun Jian and said, "So you've already set up an ambush. Today, right here, is the day you die." Yun Jian uttered, her gaze fixed on the mysterious man as she gripped the wooden fan. When Yun Jian and Si Yi fought against the mysterious man, both of them suffered great losses because of the mysterious man's tricks. Now that Yun Jian and Si were at their peak, the mysterious man was definitely no match for them. Even if the mysterious man used the 100-fold potion, he might not be able to defeat Yun Jian and Si. This was the difference between them. This was also the reason why the mysterious man had been hiding in the dark and did not dare to show up directly. Is that so? Then you are gravely mistaken, sorcerer god. The mysterious man laughed loudly and said, "This black-robed man who had suddenly appeared? Wizard goddess Yun Jian." The surrounding people from Puluo City's upper class, as well as Luo Jiejun, Luo Jiechen, Hong Ling, and the others who were present, were all puzzled when they saw this scene. What's going on now? What sorcerer god? What the hell is going on? Luo Jiejun's expression could no longer be described as an expression. Just as everyone was bewildered and Yun Jian frowned, Yun Jian suddenly clutched her stomach as excruciating pain shot through her. "What did you do?" Yun Jian clutched her stomach, feeling like something was flowing out from her lower body. The pain made Yun Jian frown, but she held it in. Si took a step in front of Yun Jian and frowned. Fear that had never appeared on his expressionless face. "Xiao Jian, what's wrong?" "Ha. It's true that I can't defeat both of you if you join forces. Too bad, I've already drugged the sorcerer god before you knew she was pregnant. It's probably a problem whether or not she can keep the baby. Now that the sorcerer god is gone, you're the only one left. I've also developed the 100-fold potion that can increase my ability by 10,000 times. Do you think you're still my match?" Ha. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2389. Sorcerer Goddess. Sir God, I bet you don't know how I drugged the Sorcerer Goddess. Come to think of it, I have to thank this idiot. Ha! The mysterious man chuckled and paused. He then pointed at Wei Min, who was lying paralyzed on the ground after her head was crushed by Si Yi's kick. After chuckling, the mysterious man continued. If this idiot didn't stop your school doctor from telling you about the Sorcerer Goddess's pregnancy, I wouldn't know where to start. Ha! This idiot really hates you, Sorcerer Goddess. She was the one who drugged you. The swords that you were holding in the fencing competition were all stained with these two drugs. The combination of these two drugs turned into an abortion drug. Normal people wouldn't react to it, but this pregnant woman smelled it. Ha! If a pregnant woman smelled it, she would miscarry on the spot if she exceeded a certain time limit. These two drugs were unique to thousands of continents and did not exist on Earth. In fact, Yun Jian had already smelled the two drugs, but she did not think of it that way. She had just found out that she was pregnant not long ago. It was a mistake, but she did not expect to really be pregnant this time. Not only was she pregnant, but it was also used by the mysterious man against her. Aside from Yun Jian's ignorance, Yun Jian was not omnipotent. Whether it was the Sorcerer Goddess or the slaying god in her past life, she did not know much about gynecology in the medical field. What Yun Jian knew was how to kill a person in the shortest time possible and where a person's Achilles heel was. I did it. There's no way you can take my brother Jun away from me. It's all your fault for coming to the Wei family as Wei Lin. Wei Min, who was paralyzed on the ground, laughed mercilessly. It was not surprising. After Yun Jian revealed that she had abandoned her biological sister and found out that Yun Jian was the slaying god, she rushed to Yun Jian and shouted at Yun Jian, "You're finished." This was because Wei Min had been used by the mysterious man to drug the swords. It was a drug that could cause Yun Jian to miscarry. She wanted to destroy Yun Jian. If anything happens to the child in her womb, all of you will be buried with me. Just as the mysterious man and Wei Min finished speaking with their strange words, a voice that was as cold as ice in the summer suddenly sounded. There wasn't the slightest bit of warmth in it. Si Yi's dark eyes were so cold that it was frightening. His handsome face that looked like it was sculpted, with an aura that was enough to frighten everyone present. Si Yi, he placed his left hand, he placed his hand on Yun Jian's abdomen, and injected, channeling his spiritual energy, without reservation. It was into her abdomen his, ofs, his, of God goddess, of hithestes goddesses. Goddess, that was Luo Jiajun, Luo Jiachen, Wei Xiao, and all the other members of the upper class present turned pale when they saw this scene. They had never seen such a bizarre scene. Coupled with Si Yi's, a huge wave of fear and uneasiness surrounded their hearts. At that moment, a tall and handsome figure suddenly flashed across everyone's eyes. In the next second, Si Yi went to the mysterious man and grabbed the man's collar. His well-defined hand with bulging veins was a testament to his fury. His rich voice rang almost simultaneously, "You're right. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. 10,000 times potion? Even if you've swallowed the 10,000 times potion. As the ruler of the gods' continent, I'll tear you to pieces right here and now. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2390. Without giving the mysterious man a chance to react, Si grabbed the mysterious man's collar with one hand and attacked him with the other. His speed was so fast that the naked eye could not capture it. Oh my God, am I seeing a ghost? What's a sorcerer god? Are these things that suddenly appear around us the enchantment from the anime? And what's that god continent? What's all this? There were already some people who were so scared that their faces turned pale. They were frightened by this illogical and unscientific thing in front of them. What was going on? What was going on in this world? Was it really normal for them to see one scene after another in front of them? Luo Jiajun, Luo Jiachen, Hong Ling, Wei Zhe, Wei Xiao, Wang Ruoya, Wei Lin, and the rest were shocked when they found out that Yun Jian was slaying God. Then, they almost fainted from the unrealistic scene before them. What's going on here? Why is that person targeting all of you? Luo Zhechen looked at Yun Jian from afar and swallowed the words Wei Lin that he was about to call out. Just as Luo Zhechen finished his sentence, Siyi's handsome hand had already pierced through the mysterious man's chest and crushed his heart. The mysterious man's chest was pierced through by Siyi and there was a trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth. However, this was not a fatal injury to high-level immortal cultivators from thousands of continents. Siyi did not give the mysterious man a chance to react at all. Above his handsome face, which was infuriatingly handsome, was a pair of sharp black eyes that were stained with blood at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. He pierced through the mysterious man's chest with one hand, all the way from the chest to the back of the mysterious man. His other bony hand covered the mysterious man's head at the speed of light, directly pulling the mysterious man's head out from the ground. The speed was so fast that it shocked everyone present. However, after recovering from the shock, everyone present was shocked by Siyi's furious technique. The strength of a person's hand and fist could actually penetrate a person's chest and uproot a person's head. The mysterious man seemed to have lost all signs of life, his body paralyzed. Did he die just like that? Someone asked in a trembling voice. Is the mysterious man dead? How could this be? Ha! Do you think I'm dead? I've already taken the 10,000 times potion. Now, my strength is 10,000 times stronger than before. Divine Lord, O Divine Lord, no matter how powerful you are no match for me. Moreover, you still have your wife, the witch goddess, who is about to have a miscarriage. In her current state, not only can she not help you, she might even become a burden to you. The mysterious man laughed cruelly. In that second, his chest, which had been pierced by Siyi, automatically healed. The head that had been uprooted by Siyi automatically healed back into the neck. 10,000 times potion. Swallowing this kind of medicine was definitely a very harmful thing to the body. However, as long as he killed the Divine Lord, no one in the entire deity continent would be his match. The mysterious man retreated more than 10 meters away in a flash. His wide black robe covered his original appearance. He stretched out his hand and laughed cruelly in an extremely disgusting tone. Although I've taken the 10,000 times potion and my strength is indeed not enough to defeat you, Divine Lord, I'll make it clear today. You, Divine Lord, will lose for sure. For a woman, you will lose for sure. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.